Hello everyone, welcome to What If Naruto Was Son of Meliodas and Elizabeth Part 2. Before we start, please go support Franklin Jr. LeBron for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Naruto is a male. Chapter 10. My little brother, a knight of the apocalypse. Who would have thought it? Fate is so unpredictable. Naruto thought as he walked toward the castle. He left his brother with the other boys and holy knights to go to the castle to see one of the most important people in his life. How will he react? I asked the heir with that doubt. He's been missing for over 7 years, and it seems they lost hope of him being alive over 2 years ago after they stopped posting wanted posters about him. He might faint. Naruto looked to his side at his companion's bright but purple hair. Naruto, Kafka. You weren't supposed to arrive in a day. How did you leave the kingdom? The woman smiled at the question. Naruto watched as Kafka raised his hands and showed him his fingers, where threads were attached, demonstrating his magical power. At this distance? He asked, and the woman smiled at him. There's no known limit to the distance. Hell, he's even seen Kafka control people from the normal world to the demonic realm or heaven. The problem with distance is that the further away it is, the less specific the order must be. If the order was complex, such as a detailed infiltration mission, the controller would be undone and leave the controlled party free. But if the order was basic, such as simply guarding a kingdom, without specifics, the controlling party would simply act on the order. Kafka, don't worry. The kingdom will be fine for today. How about we go shopping? Something new wouldn't hurt, he said, and Naruto tried to shake his head. But suddenly he was pulled by the girl 3 years older than him. Naruto, Kafka. I have to go to the castle. We have to talk about the alliance, she said, trying to persuade the purple-haired woman, but as expected, Kafka denied it with amusement. I want to go shopping. For a moment, the blond man's only green eye gleamed purple, but then the glow disappeared, and the boy shook his head. You know control doesn't work on me, he said calmly, not caring about the fact that he was almost controlled by the woman. I know you can't be controlled, but this way you know I won't leave room for a no. The girl smiled. Now let's go. There are new offers I heard have come in at lionés, and I think they'd suit me. Naruto smiled a little. Okay, just for a while. Then we'll get back to the mission, he said, happily following the woman who was leading him through the village looking for a store. So Naru, where is Sil? Shouldn't she be with you? I asked, while trying to find any news store that caught my attention. I didn't want to just walk into any store. I needed something good. The silver-haired man nodded at the question. He's looking for an escaped knight of the apocalypse. Apparently, the 4 of them are inside lionés and are about to meet up, he said, and Kafka seemed interested. Really? Elian didn't tell us anything about that. Was the alternative he saw wrong? She said, confused. Naruto was about to answer, but was suddenly pulled by the woman to the next store. Entering, Naruto's sweat dropped when he saw that the first store was about what Miss Kafka cared about the most: glasses. At this rate, she'll spend all our savings on glasses, he thought breathlessly. Coughing into his hand, he composed himself enough to speak. About Elian. I doubt I was mistaken. Perhaps in that alternative, or they met today, or if it happened, he didn't tell us of his own volition, he said, but when he looked around, he didn't see Miss Kafka until, after searching for her for a while, he saw her trying on glasses, which made him break out in a comical sweat. Look, Naru, 2 for 1 offer. The boy shook his head. They look good on you, Miss Kafka. The woman smiled at her. Thank you, Naru. The boy smiled in agreement. Now let's go shopping for clothes. I'm really looking forward to some new bikinis and underwear. Join me, Naru. Naruto shook his head at his companion's actions. Elsewhere, Silver Wolf could be seen pacing as he searched for the description his companion's effeminate brother had given him. They sure are the same. If it weren't for the hair and the reversed eye colors, I wouldn't be able to tell which was which, the hacker thought, remembering her partner's brother. You should use the points I have to find him faster. Searching piece by piece is boring, she said to the person next to her, who was a Kaien. Stop complaining, woman. It's Prince Tristan's orders. If he says we should search like this, we will, he said in a very hostile manner, clearly adoring Tristan. Silverwolf looked at this with a tick on her forehead. Your beloved effeminate Prince Tan doesn't order me around. I am Silverwolf, the world's greatest hacker and the strongest chaos hunter, she said proudly, and Kaien looked at her. You, Silverwolf? Chaos hunter? Don't make me laugh, she said mockingly at Silverwolf, who frowned angrily. Silverwolf is worth more than 5,100 billion gold coins. She wouldn't be so stupid to enter the most powerful kingdom, much less announce herself in such a childish way. Another tick appeared on the forehead of the gray-haired girl for being called stupid. Besides, you're friends with Prince Naruto, right? I doubt the king's eldest son would ever be with trash like the Chaos Hunters. He couldn't finish when the barrel on Silverwolf's wrist pointed at his head. Puzzled, the boy stared at the gun in his head, which lit up, ready to fire. Before the attack could hit the boy at point-blank range, who couldn't react, he was pushed out of the way by a white flash, allowing Silverwolf's weapon shot to hit a wall in the background, causing clear destruction. Silverwolf, how romantic, the angel came to save her husband, she said amusedly, looking at the sky where Tristan with his goddess wings was holding Kaien, surprised. What are you doing? Why are you attacking him? Silverwolf, you should stop calling everyone you see around stupid. Silverwolf doesn't forgive, he said, aiming at the boy again, and when he fired again, Tristan pushed him out of the way. Silverwolf? The hacker from the Chaos Hunters? It's her, he thought doubtfully as he lowered Kaien to the ground and looked directly at Silverwolf. Are you really Silverwolf from the Chaos Hunters? He asked seriously. If it was true, Naruto should know it too. That didn't make him an indirect accomplice to the group. From Silverwolf's cannon, a curved blade of pure magic appeared. This gives you the answer, she said. And at that moment, thousands of holographic keys appeared around her. One of them read, Score 200 coins, which brought a smile to her face. Tristan looked at the hologram seriously because this confirmed the girl's identity. So you are. Tell me something, Naruto knows who you are, he asked seriously. Not wanting to believe that his brother was with criminals like the Knights, who according to rumors are described as merciless murderers who have massacred several towns and villages without regard for children. They even somehow entered the eternal kingdom of Camelot and massacred both civilians and Chaos Knights. Even, according to rumors left by Chaos Knights in Britain, it was said that children and women were exploded by the group's hacker who was supposedly the girl in front of him. Silverwolf smiled at him, angering Tristan. Answer the question. You're tricking Naruto into being with him. There's no way he's with criminals like you. Hey, Naruto, if Naruto hears you, he might kill you. He doesn't like it when people talk about his precious friends like that, she said, pressing a button on her holographic keyboard. Tristan, noticing this, drew both swords on either side of his waist. As he tried to attack Silverwolf, the girl stood there motionless as her gum popped on her lips. Not caring that she wasn't defending herself, Tristan, in his anger, continued to attack Silverwolf. Or so he planned, when in a second he felt the pain of his flesh. His flesh, being cut by cold metal. Falling to the ground from the cut, he raised his head slightly, pained, as a fragmented black blade with a golden handle was placed in front of his face. Naruto. Why? Elsewhere. Sneeze. Ashu. Someone is talking about me? Naruto wondered as he walked alongside Kafka toward another tent, or that would be if they didn't feel a pulse of power very close to them. It seems like Sil is fighting someone. Naruto nodded. Against my brother, he said, feeling the power of his brother near the one on the silver tarp. What's happening between them? Kafka, maybe she revealed she was a hunter. I can't imagine her not bragging about being one of the most wanted in all of Britain. Doko laughing at her younger companion. Silverwolf really was someone special, not only in skills but in attitude and behavior. Naruto, if so, we must go. We can't let more people get involved in this, he said, sensing the magic of the other boys who were with the boy named Percival, and also feeling the power of his childhood friend. Kafka, who also felt the magic approaching, nodded. "Let's go, Naru," said the purple-haired girl as they began to walk. "Naruto, wait a second, just let me put these purchases away," he said, showing more than 10 bags in his hands. Kafka smiled at seeing all his purchases. Naruto's sword blade emerged from the ground, giving way to the crack in the timeless realm where his sword lay when not in use, although something else also emerged. "Topaz," he said, looking at the girl. He had left her in that kingdom because it was easier to transport her. It wouldn't take her time in any way, and he wouldn't have to be near her like that, making his mission easier without thinking about his revenge, although that was undone when he saw her. "Kafka, take care of her. I'll go with Silverwolf," he said, not wanting to spend time around his former childhood friend. The purple-haired girl noticed this and nodded. Taking Topaz on her shoulder, she allowed the purchases to enter the timeless realm, the sword dimension. Interestingly, for her, it could be the same size as a box or a planet, which was what the dimension wanted. Something that could be a universe, but in seconds change into a multiverse or megaverse, something unbelievable unless you see it, she thought, smiling in a very dark way. Her Naru always had something that amazed her, the sword capable of cutting through space itself, the dimension of this one that could measure the same as a universe, and her own power, so great that it had to be sealed by her, thus limiting her demonic and goddess power. So Naruto headed to where his brother and Silverwolf should be. Upon arriving, the blonde man saw a strange scene. Standing reassuringly was Silverwolf, while in front of her, a kneeling Tristan stood, his eyes white, showing he was unconscious. Also, further behind, Akayan was also unconscious, but this one appeared to have been hit. Maybe from the danger, I wasn't sure, but I had no doubts either. "Did you use family murderer in it?" he asked, drawing Silverwolf's attention to him. "Yeah, I don't like his attitude toward me. So I taught him a lesson," he said, smiling. "It's also possible that he repeated the simulation more than 4 times. Naruto sweated a drop. Family killer. Or more simply, dead for love. It's a simulation ability that Silverwolf's reality hacking technique gives him. A simulation where the person dies at the hands of one or more loved ones, depending on the last loved one the opponent thought of. Naruto let it go. "He didn't break mentally, did he?" Silverwolf shook his head, and Naruto nodded in relief. "Fine, I'll take him." Naruto cut himself off. He had to jump to avoid a flash of fire that appeared where he had been before. "Fire? It doesn't seem normal. I'd even compare it to light," he thought distractedly. And that's why he didn't notice when a flash appeared across his face, seemingly blinding him. In a few seconds, thousands of mini-sized creatures with the appearance of the boy Percival entered the flash of light that was scything Naruto down. Silverwolf looked at this, and at that moment, Percival, his group of friends, and Tristan's friends stood in front of her. "What's going on here? Because Tristan and Kayan are hurt?" A boy with two-tone hair asked, one white for the top and the other black for the bottom. His outfit consisted of a buttoned white shirt and simple black pants with black boots. This boy was Jade, and he was from Tristan's squad. He was also a boy Naruto met when he was 9 years old, when he was almost caught by a dragon. Silverwolf was about to say something, but had to back away from an attack by a girl with long pink hair. Moving away from the attack, Silverwolf looked at the abnormally tall girl. Her outfit consisted of a half bodysuit that covered her breasts, and from there down was a miniskirt that was no higher than her thighs. This was Isolde, another girl Naruto knew as a child. Finally, the flash created by the jade faded, revealing Naruto covered in thousands upon thousands of Percival minis. The silver-haired man seemed angry at not being able to get the creatures off him, until an instant. A flare of demonic fire came out of Naruto, causing the mini creatures to fly off in different directions. "Oh no! My mini Percival," said the normal Percival in chibi form, watching as his minis were rebuilt after having exploded due to Naruto's magic. The boy who could now be seen better was a light green-haired boy with wings. On his head he had a helmet with the seal of Ouroboros. This was Percival, Knight of the Apocalypse and at the same time of death. With that, a Naruto with his purple eyes and serious gaze appeared. Although his demonic mark hadn't yet appeared, it was clear that his power, even sealed, was astonishing. The silver-haired man was about to speak, but 2 arrows tried to hit him. But they disintegrated upon contact with his aura. With a serious look, Naruto looked at the culprit, Lancelot, son of his uncle Ban and, so to speak, his friend for years. Lancelot's clothing was a red and white sleeveless shirt, his pants were baggy and red, along with red sneakers. His eyes were crimson red and his hair was blonde. He was also one of the Knights of the Apocalypse, the one of war to be more specific. Naruto, slowly back away from Tristan and that boy. We don't want to take this any further, he said seriously, aiming 2 more arrows. Naruto wasn't going to obey. If there's one thing he hates, it's people who think they can simply threaten him into doing their bidding, or they'll do something against him. Raising his hand, a kind of sphere of darkness began to form little by little, until it created a sphere as large as a house. Clenching his fist, that sphere became the size of a simple baseball. So I don't do it, he replied in a serious and hostile tone. He wouldn't do anything, but this could give him the impression that ordering him around wouldn't be the best idea. Lancelot, seeing the attack, was about to launch his arrows, but at that moment his body froze. Well, giving orders to my Neru, I should say that the last person who tried is dead, said Kafka with his purple threads on his fingers, which were also around everyone, making them under the control of the hunter. Seeing this, Naruto deactivated his darkness attack. But surprisingly, he felt a sudden pain, and at that moment his body began to burn. He looked at the flames around him, which were clearly the same ones he dodged earlier. They were painful, yes, but nothing he couldn't bear. The incredible thing was that it seemed to cause more pain than any fire he'd ever felt. Ignoring that, he made a finger seal and spoke. Avis Nifo no Kaleknak, he said seriously, and the flames around him intertwined. Looking over a roof, he saw a person he didn't recognize. It was a very tall girl, almost the size of an adult. Her clothes were entirely black, and she had short, black hair and metal boots for her feet. This was Hera Gawain, a knight of the famine apocalypse. Sir? Don't interfere, whoever you are, he said seriously. While still in front of the Lancelot, who remained in the same position with a sword in his hand, he looked seriously at the purple-haired woman. He controls us all, so we don't make a movement, we can't even speak. That way they could kill us immediately, he said seriously. Naruto, leave them alone, Miss Kafka. Deko, feeling a familiar magical power. We've been taking too long, and it's best to get out of all this, she said, wanting to turn around, but there fell a silhouette in a calm but serious manner. And then a deep voice chirped. What's all this fuss about? Chapter 11. Naruto, upon hearing the voice, without thinking, with his demonic mode contained, launched an attack without knowing who it was. He sent a slash with his sword, but a green blade with holes stopped it. Without waiting a second, an upward kick was blocked by his enemy with extreme ease. But a side kick was met by his distraction, bringing a smile to his face. He raised his hand again when a once giant sphere appeared in his hand and shrank into a baseball. Throwing it, the sphere was quickly divided by its opponent, and that made him smile. 1,000-year binding. With that, the 2-pronged sphere began to ensnare its opponent in bonds of darkness. But a burst of demonic power forced it back. So he's a demon, he thought, smiling. This is a chance to use him. He thought, and at that moment, he moved his hair from the left side of his face, and his left eye, which was purple due to his demonic power, changed to an orange gold, demonstrating a strange and almost impossible fusion of powers. 90% darkness, he said, as particles of darkness began to fly across his right side, and an aura of the same color formed. 10% light. With that, particles of light flew across his left side, and an aura of light formed, creating an image of light and darkness. At that moment the particles of darkness and light began to come together in the center, and a sphere of a purple but lighter color began to merge in the center, creating a fusion of colors. Smiling, he stretched out his hand, preparing to attack. Baijidama. The 2-meter-high sphere began to advance, but a voice stopped it. Naruto? Naruto opened his eyes in shock at the voice. So much was the surprise that the attack was cancelled, and Naruto looked at the person behind him who had spoken to him. Mom, he said, surprised, looking at his mother, who was still the same as the last time he saw her 7 years ago. Elizabeth was surprised. And Neru, she said, approaching her son, who disappeared 7 years ago. He looked so grown up, so different. His eyes were very different, not counting the different colors from the fusion of magic. The brightness in them seemed to be lacking. The two slowly drew closer. And suddenly, the silver-haired man, who had always been serious, hostile, and focused on revenge, gave a big hug to his mother, whom he hadn't seen in a while. Elizabeth stroked her son's head. Even though he didn't say anything, he seemed reluctant to let go. Okay, Neru. Mom's here with you again, she whispered to the boy who was hugging her tightly. In the distance, all the still paralyzed boys, along with the unconscious Tristan and Kaisen, watched the interaction. Who would have thought the dreaded Blade would react like that upon seeing his mother? What do you think, Kafka? The hacker asked, but when she looked at the woman next to her, she saw her with a friendly smile that was common to her, but with a threatening aura around her, and her eyes shining with madness. The girl, seeing this rarely seen expression on her friend's face, took a step away. I'd better leave her. Maybe she'll be fine in a few minutes. We took a few steps to the right. He didn't want to be the woman's first target if she wanted to attack something because of her Yandra-level jealousy. Naruto pulled away and revealed his face, tears streaming down his cheeks. He gave, in what for him has been over 1,000 years, a truly happy smile. Elizabeth did the same with her son, caressing his cheek, which gave Naruto a feeling he'd missed. A mother's caress. His mother. Elizabeth smiled at how Naruto reacted to her touch. Look at you, Naru-chan. You're so big, so strong, and so beautiful. You've really grown. I say the same, Eli. He's a grown-up now. The same voice that spoke before said, but this time it was softer, which helped Naruto recognize it. Dad, he said, surprised, turning around to see his father, who, like his mother, was still the same as the last time he saw him 7 years ago. Meliodas smiled at his son. How are you, little one? He said, calling him by his nickname, which he'd given him for being shorter than his brother, even though he was older by minutes. It seems you've grown not only in size, but those blows weren't weak at all. If you're that strong, I imagine you've already touched your first breasts, right? And with that, the atmosphere of happiness yet sadness Naruto and Elizabeth had for their rescue center was broken. Elizabeth gave a small smile at her wife's antics, and Naruto's sweat dropped in chibi form. I can tell you that he has touched several breasts, sir. Meliodas turned around and saw Miss Kafka walking next to Silverwolf, who was squinting at Kafka. When Naruto touched the purple-haired girl's breasts, and why didn't he tell her about it when he touched hers? Those were his current thoughts. While Meliodas looked at her with a confused face as both girls approached, he realized and transformed into chibi form. So not just one, but two at such a young age. You're quite the hunk. Although hers are a little small, breasts are breasts, he said, looking at Silverwolf, who got angry at this. Damn old pervert! Silverwolf shouted angrily. While Kafka gave a small chuckle. He caught Elizabeth's eye and looked at her in response. Are you Naru's girlfriend? Aren't you a little old for him? Elizabeth suddenly asked, while Naruto, who was comfortable in her embrace, blushed. Mom! He cried, embarrassed. Miss Kafka and I are just friends. Kafka just smiled. It's only been a minor accident that affected them. It's impossible to live with 3 girls and not have that interference. It's not a big problem anymore, though, he said, smiling. While at her side, Silverwolf blushed. Don't tell me I was the only one who let him touch her breasts voluntarily, she thought, blushing. Kafka looked at her face, all red in doubt, but left her aside to continue the conversation with his Naru's mother. Meliodas, that's very nice and all. What happened here? Everyone's paralyzed, and Tristan is sleeping on his knees? I asked, seeing Tristan, who was still unconscious. And Kaisen too. Naruto's sweat dropped at how his father described his brother's condition. The black-haired idiot in the back is to blame for all of this, Silverwolf said, still angry at the boy. Meliodas nodded. Yes, sorry. Kain usually acts like this because of Tristan, and what did he do now? He asked doubtfully. He called me stupid, dumb, idiot, and a liar. All for not believing I was Silverwolf, she said, crossing her arms angrily. Meliodas nodded at what she said. Yes, Kain is like that, although he went too far. Worse about Silverwolf, I don't even believe that. One of the 5 most wanted in all of Britain entering one of its kingdoms, and especially presenting herself before a holy knight, isn't very credible, he said, looking at Silverwolf, who became angry again. Was it so hard to believe she was a reality hacker? Before anything happened, Naruto intervened. Yes, it's her, he said calmly. Meliodas looked at his son. And how do you know that? Naruto shrugged. We work together. We all know each other's identities, he said, and Meliodas became serious at that. He was starting to believe that story about the girl being Silverwolf, though it wasn't entirely believable, especially because of the paralyzed ones. That would be something Kafka would do, not Silverwolf. Fine. Although the fact that your Kafka is more believable, since you explain how everyone is paralyzed and controlled by these purple fabrics, he said, looking at Lancelot, who was still in his bow-wielding position. The only sign that the boy was seeing him was his pupil, which was turned toward him. Kafka. That's my fault, he said, and the cloths in his hands disappeared, giving free rein once more to the young men who quickly prepared to fight. Do you want to be my slaves again so quickly? He asked, smiling. Seeing the situation, Meliodas tried to calm the young people down. Calm down, guys. Whatever happened can be discussed, he said, but the boy from Percival's group with long, red hair, a white shirt, and a knife at his waist spoke angrily. Of course not. That bastard crushed us with his magic a few minutes ago, and now he threatened to kill us all, he said angrily, but a raised hand from Lancelot silenced him. The red-eyed blonde man looked at his cousin sternly. You threatened to attack Tristan. Naruto didn't seem to care about the accusation about him threatening his brother. Is that true, Naruto-chan? Naruto looked at his mother. I wanted to prove a point. Threatening your enemy with an attack when they have your comrade at their mercy isn't a very good idea. Besides, I hate being ordered around when they can't contain me, he said, his green and blue eyes changing to a demonic purple at the last part. Do you have a problem with that, Lancelot? He asked in a less than friendly manner, his aura of pure power a little surprising. The red-eyed blonde didn't seem at all afraid of the power, and even gave off a golden aura almost as intense. The aura battle would continue, if not for the silver-haired boy's groan of pain as his mother scolded him. Naru, you can't threaten Lancelot like that. He's your cousin. Naruto nodded quickly. Yes, Mom. But stop pulling my ear in front of my classmates. It's humiliating, he said in chibi form with crocodile tears in his eyes. All the other young people, who had previously been scared and serious about the young man, now looked at him with beads of sweat. Is this really the same person? He went from that hot, menacing man to a child scolded by his mother, the blue-haired girl thought. This was Anya from the group and Percival's friend. Meanwhile, again, Kafka's face was darkened, giving clear signs of his Yandere phase and jealousy of the silver-haired boy. My Naru must really be attached to his mother, he thought, smiling in a friendly way that was clearly not very friendly. He didn't like how Naruto clung to his mother very much. He could easily leave her, and he didn't want that. Meanwhile, something different was happening in the older lioness's head. Seriously, why embarrass myself now? He thought with shame. Shame he hadn't shown in a few years, but that he hadn't felt since the last time he touched a breast. Lancelot, I just find it strange that he's back after 7 years. And even being part of a supposed criminal group? Said the blonde, looking at Naruto seriously. And as expected, Naruto also looked at him that way. He didn't like the blonde's audacity. Meliodas, Lancelot's right. If you were fine all this time, why come back now? At least you didn't come back for this. Not in the main. Naruto moved to his mother's side, confusing her. You're right. We Chaos Hunters came to form an alliance with Lioness on behalf of Sarkat. he said, standing next to his companions. Naruto, you can't say that like that. How are you part of the hunters if there are only 5 of you? And none of you have your description? He said seriously. Naruto was about to answer, but a magical pressure made him stop. Leave it for later. Pelgard is here, he said seriously, making a hand seal and whispering, transformation backward. His appearance was that of Blade. Everyone who knew Blade and his appearance was shocked. So it's him, Lancelot thought in surprise. He was so focused on this that he couldn't stop reading the boy's mind to figure it out. Meanwhile, Percival's friends and companions were surprised to hear the name of the person here. Wait! Pelgard is here? The Black Knight of Chaos? Asked the redhead named Donnie, worried. Meliodas, hearing the chaos part, became serious. How do you know he's here? Little Percival asked with innocent doubt. Naruto looked at him and saw the flowers of hell, better known as chrysanthemums, emerging from the ground, along with the sword that pierces hell. I recognize every magic I've fought with in my entire life, he said, and behind him, both Kafka and Silver Wolf returned to their Mikema and Stell transformations. They still had to maintain their original appearance for some crucial moment against Arthur. So it's them. A redhead with the power of control. A silver-haired woman with holograms at her disposal, and a black-haired man hated by death. The 3 main Chaos Hunters. Meliodas thought seriously, seeing his son among the most wanted people. Not in Lyonesse, but in the entire world. Even Camelot, a kingdom that was almost unrelated to Britain, had a bounty on hunters, and their reward was one of the largest. 100,500 billion modern gold coins for the entire team. Percival, fine. Team Percival will take care of this, said the little green-haired boy, prepared, but was stopped by Meliodas. Sorry, kiddo. But this isn't a game. We really need to finish him off, and for that, I'll come personally, he said seriously. But at that moment, a gentleman hurried up to his side, confusing him. Lord Meliodas. The former King Blatra wants to speak with you. This is a new vision, he said, tired from traveling all over the kingdom in search of the king. Meliodas became serious at this. He knew that if time passed, the now elderly Blatra might forget the vision and profession he had seen. But passing up an opportunity like taking out one of the top Chaos Knights would be a great step forward, since those knights are almost never in a place where there is a sin. Sighing, he looked at his wife, Elizabeth, for advice. Fine, you guys take care of it. At least hold them off until I get there. If not, get him out of the country, and we'll talk about this later, Naruto. The now dark-haired man didn't care. Let's go, he said, starting to move forward, and in an instant, both Naruto and his companions disappeared in a blur. Wow! They teleported, the little green-haired boy said in amazement. But Lancelot calmly denied her claim. No, they just moved too fast, he said calmly. Meanwhile, at his side, the kneeling Tristan recovered. Not another cut. Huh? Asked the long-haired, silver-haired man. I wasn't fighting Naruto a second ago? He asked, but received a blow to the head. Lancelot, why was that? He cried out in pain, looking at his cousin. For being so stupid as to not notice the illusion, he said sternly. Such a cruel illusion. Making your family hurt you over and over again, he thought, looking at the silver-haired younger man's memories. Hey! It seemed so real, I even felt it cut into his back hundreds of times. Hey! He said in amazement. Slowly rising from his knees, he saw a still unconscious Kaien behind him. Percival, the silver-haired girl, also put him in an illusion. But she says it was worse than you. Donnie says so? He said in chibi form, specifying who told him what was worse. Tristan, good. We should get him somewhere he can rest. And me too. My head hurts a little. I thought, a little mentally stressed. Lancelot. Leave it for the afternoon. There's a Chaos Knight in the kingdom now, and Naruto and his companions are already on their way, he said, preparing to leave, taking his bow from the ground and placing it on his back. Tristan remembered what he discovered about the girl. It's true. Guys, there's something you should know. The girl Naruto came with is a silverwood dash. We already know, genius, said Lancelot, retreating with the others. The silver-haired man went blank. What did I miss? He said, looking at his friends. Oh, Isolde. You're back, he said happily, seeing the girl who had run away saying things like, Percival took away her sanctity, or something similar. The pink-haired girl smiled a little embarrassedly. Yes, a beautiful lady helped me by talking to me. Now I know that no matter what I lose, I should have stayed by your side, Mr. Tristan, she said happily. Tristan, beautiful lady? The girl nodded. Yes, it's over there. She was cut off when she saw that the girl with the short and long hair from before wasn't there where Naruto had been attacked with fire. Looks like she's gone. Tristan nodded. Fine, never mind. Now the important thing is the Chaos Knight Isolde. Take Kaien and Jade and I will go with the others, he said, leaving with the boy with 2 shades of hair. Meanwhile, Percival's group could be seen arriving with Lancelot, where a totally imposing aura rose up. Upon arriving, they were shocked by what they saw, a Pelgard being humiliated by Blade, Naruto, as if it were a child's game. The man named Pelgard wore black armor, alluding to his name as a Black Knight. He wore a circular mace along with golden details on some parts of his armor. In fire skills, Pelgard's fire was literally burning before Naruto's powerful purple flames. Are you going to give up now? Or do we have to humiliate you even more? Blade, Naruto, asked calmly and seriously. Mikema, Kafka, looked at this and smiled. Coming here even knowing we were coming was stupid. Or do you want to achieve something more? The Busta redhead asked doubtfully. Pelgard, kneeling on the ground, didn't seem to react to their questions. At that moment, a flying creature passed by Naruto and his companions, who didn't flinch, as if they had expected something like this. Lancelot frowned upon seeing this. She's running away, he said, and a golden glow caught his attention at his side. As everyone looked, the black-haired girl who attacked Naruto earlier appeared, stretching out her finger. It won't, Radiant Blast. With that said, the man-creature exploded into a golden scream, like a miniature sun. Wait! Golden magic! You are Gawain! The last knight, said the astonished little Percival. Naruto looked at the girl who had attacked him before. The last knight. Wasn't the one with the golden magic a boy? He wondered doubtfully. Maybe it was just the armor. After all, the 4 knights were a prophecy of the future where everyone wore armor, and the one the girl wore before was a man's. Pelgard looked at the girl who had blown up his first contingency escape route. Miss? You destroyed my escape route, he asked, looking at the girl, whose face would be hidden by her armor. Young woman? How effrontery you have to call me so insolently, he said proudly. Percival looked at Pelgard seriously. On your guard. Chapter 12. On your guard, said little Percival, drawing his sword in Pelgard's direction. The latter just laughed. Do you want to challenge me now that you don't have them? He asked, amused. He saw the hunters in the case, and his gaze received a finger of friendship from Silverwolf. Percival didn't seem to change, until he put away his sword and calmed down. Okay. You can go, he said, and everyone behind him was surprised. Blade, Naruto, looked at him with doubt for the boy. It seemed to him that he was different. Not only in thoughts, but in spirit. I can't hate you like I do my father, I just can't. Besides, you don't seem like a bad person to me, I know that you are good inside. Blade, Naruto, looked at him. What's your point? He wondered, looking at the boy. While Pelgard looked at the boy in confusion. Is this strange to me? Let me see if I understand. Are you telling me to cut ties with my king and join you? At what the Black Knight had said, Percival was astonished. Really? I mean, of course, he said happily, but in his joy he couldn't react to being taken over by Pelgard, and when he raised his shield, he suddenly began to fly like a glider, which helped Pelgard flee again. Oh, and this is what's happening to you, he said from the sky, throwing a sphere that, when it exploded, left a large pink cube covering them. Magic cube? We'll never be able to get out of here with this thing, Tristan shouted, worried, and everyone else started shouting back. That's how Percival will be treated, and said, worried about her friend. Meanwhile, Lancelot watched everyone's worries and spoke without apparent concern, which made Blade look at him calmly. Lancelot, I think we should stop him from escaping now. Blade, Naruto, left his transformation and returned to his original appearance while shrugging at what his cousin had said and began to walk backwards. We prevented him from being in the kingdom. It's a good favor for the Alliance. What happens from here on out is no longer my business, he said, walking to the edge of the cube. But his Amino was stopped by his companion Kafka, who had abandoned Mikima's appearance and was outside the cube. Era, I don't think it's going to work, Naru. Elio made it clear that both lionés and the Knights of the Apocalypse are crucial to the king's downfall. So we must keep them alive for a while, said Kafka from the other side of the perfect cube, since both she and Silver Wolf and most of the Holy Knights were not within the range of the cube. Naruto sighed in annoyance at having to act as a bodyguard for these kids, but orders were still orders after all. If they seek their own deaths, I'll let them die without doing anything. He said this, earning a mischievous smile from Kafka, which confused him. It's not Miss Kafka's typical smile. In fact, it's daring, he thought, looking at Kafka's mischievous smile above him, but he put that aside. Avisneef Noikoleknak, he whispered, making a hand seal, and the entire cube disappeared. With that, Tristan, shocked by his brother's actions, summoned wings of light and flew off, while the girl named Gawain disappeared in a teleportation. Was that an absolute cancellation? Lancelot asked from behind Naruto, who didn't flinch. No. It's just a variant I created. It cancels all defensive attacks, but not offensive ones, he explained calmly, without any interest. But at that moment, his body tensed, and the iris of his left eye suddenly turned black, his pupil turning purple, but lighter than his demonic counterpart. Quickly closing his eye, the silver-haired man took the lock of hair from his left side and placed it back over his eye, so that no one besides Kafka would notice. This only happens when they use chaos magic. That only means Pelgard used magic or another knight is present. But I can't sense anyone I know, he thought seriously. But seeing that she had no answer, she just placed her Maki on the ground and in a second it was shot into the sky, leaving the ground broken and her companions along with their future allies. He could have just flown away, right? Silver Wolf asked, looking at the retreating blonde. Kafka nodded, causing the girl to sweat drop. He's an idiot. Elsewhere, Gawain could be seen appearing next to Pelgard in an instant, surprising the latter. You're going to die, the black-haired woman said in a hostile tone. Pelgard, noticing her presence, didn't seem intimidated. Why are you so annoying? Just taking a walk. I was planning to return you in a few minutes. Gawain didn't seem to like the joke. And he didn't care whether little Percival was there or not. The black-haired girl slashed at the Black Knight. Unable to dodge, the man decided to throw the green-haired man into the sky and receive the slash at point-blank range, causing a large gash to appear on his chest, destabilizing his magic and causing his shield to begin to collapse. Percival gets angry at this. What did you do? Covering his body with his golden power, Percival created wings to fly and I was able to land a strong blow to Gawain's face, causing him to fall. With the girl already gone, he quickly followed the Black Knight, who was still falling. Take my hand! He screamed, seeing the ground so close. Seeing that his life depended on it, Pelgard reached out and Percival grabbed it, saving the man from dying like crushed fruit. You're a strange boy. You attack allies and save enemies, Pelgard said, sitting on the ground, looking at his bleeding wound. At this, little Percival smiled. Well, Lancelot said you didn't want to kill anyone, so there's no need to fight you, he said happily. But a loud stomp caught his attention. As he turned around, he received a strong kick to the stomach, sending him flying to the same level as the brunette, who, unfazed, punched him in the head, sending him flying to the side. Tristan, seeing this, fell in front of Gawain angrily. What are you doing, Gawain? We don't attack friends, he said seriously. Meanwhile, the girl lowered her head to his level while smiling arrogantly. Gawain, He attacked me when I was finishing off the enemy. You attacked while Percival was with him. You would have hurt him too, and that's not allowed here, Gawain," he said, annoyed by the girl's attitude. Gawain smiled at what he'd said, angering Tristan a little. "You're very attentive to details. But sometimes it's not good to ignore some of them." "Tristan, how can you say that? He is one of the Knights of the Apocalypse, he is our friend." Gawain seemed to bristle at the last part. "That's the problem. Putting me on the same level as you is humiliating to me. I only take orders from anyone who can move me, but since I'm perfect in every way, I don't take orders from anyone," she said, smiling haughtily as she approached the prince. "If you don't agree, you can use both swords against me." "Never. I will not raise my swords against my allies. I would only use them against an enemy," he said, but received a strong blow to the back of the head from Gawain that sent him flying, but not enough force to render him unconscious. Gawain, weakling. He continued on his way to Percival, who was lying injured on the ground. "Fine, let's continue with you. You'll pay for hitting that face," he said, his face reflecting his annoyance. By raising his hand, he threw a strong punch at the frightened green-haired man, who disappeared from the scene before being hit, which surprised both the injured Pelgard and Gawain, who was looking for Percival in amazement. "He disappeared, he must have escaped like the little rascal he is," he said, smiling with confidence in his words while Pelgard, next to him, tried to get Lara to flee. "It's just keeping them alive, isn't it, Miss Kafka?" a voice asked behind the girl. As she turned around, Gawain saw Naruto with Percival safe on his shoulder, and some kind of purple magic seal on his left ear. "Yes, Naru, so this one's alive, he's more than fine. The rest is secondary and not part of our obligations," said Kafka's voice through the intercom seal in his ear. It was the fastest way for them to communicate when he didn't have a regular intercom like the ones Kafka created. "Naruto, good. With a free pass." Naruto placed the green-haired boy on his back end, as if on cue. The boy wrapped his arms around the silver-haired boy's neck, holding on. "You don't like taking orders from someone beneath you. I understand. I don't like being ordered around by someone who can't keep me in line either," she said, clapping and stretching both hands out in front of her. "But like you said, you just have to be superior to yourself, and that's it." "Right." Hearing this, the girl smiled wildly. "A privilege that neither you nor anyone else in this world has, but if you have any objection to this you can contradict me," he said as his sacred treasure, the little sword, appeared in his hand ready to be used. Naruto said nothing as his hands became surrounded by darkness, and he announced the attack. "Convergence, piercing darkness," he announced as a sphere of darkness appeared within his half-open palm. As he finished preparing it, he closed his hands, causing the sphere to explode, like a laser. In the form of darkness, it flew out, piercing Gawain's shoulder like butter. Gawain, surprised, touched her shoulder, which had been pierced like butter. "I couldn't see it coming. That thing is too fast," she thought, touching the blood that was spilling down her shoulder, which made her extremely angry. But due to her pride, she couldn't admit that it had hurt her so much, so with a smile, she confidently placed her little sword on her shoulder. "If you think a scratch like that can take me down, you're sorely mistaken." Naruto looked at this without interest. "Brat, hold on," he said to Percival, who, confused, tightened his grip on the blonde's neck, causing the high collar of the shirt to become constricted and some marks on Naruto's neck to show a little before the public eye. "Ready." Naruto clapped again and sighed calmly, his eyes returning to the purple of the demon clan. "Convergence, multiple perforation," he said, and this time, in addition to the sphere inside Naruto's palm, 4 more appeared around his hand at the same time. The 5 spheres compressed and were shot towards Gawain at maximum speed, who didn't see them coming. But by pure luck, they were all repelled by an aura of light that dispelled Naruto's multiple piercings. Looking at his brother, who was responsible for what happened, Naruto sighed wearily. "Stay out of it, or you'll end up just like her. That's the only warning I'll give," he simply said, but Tristan, unconcerned about his brother's threat, stood in front of Gawain, his goddess eyes and wings activated. "That's enough. Gawain is seriously wounded and could bleed to death. Naruto, I won't let you pass," he said seriously as his eyes became darker than before and a large amount of demonic energy accumulated around him. But before I heal her, I must teach her a little lesson, he said seriously as he clapped a third time, and this time more than 10 spheres of darkness surrounded Naruto's hand, which compressed and announced the technique. Convergence, drilling machine gun, he said, and like the others, the spheres shot out against Tristan's aura of light at maximum speed. But something that surprised the silver-haired man was that at that exact moment the perforation that came out of Naruto's hand changed its trajectory upwards, passing the light barrier, and even being slower than before. The puncture pierced his shoulder from his shock at what had happened. You were so surprised you didn't react? That's a mistake that could cost you your life, Tristan, Naruto said, looking seriously at his brother on the ground. But raising his hand, he blocked a kick from Gawain, who smiled still hurt. Thanks for getting him out of the way, now I just have to finish off a minor annoyance, he said, and Naruto didn't seem to mind. With that, his fists became covered in demonic darkness, giving way to some kind of dark gloves that enhance his punches. If you think so, I hope you can keep hitting me, he said cleverly. The girl dropped her sacred treasure, the little sword, and prepared for close combat. Don't be surprised if you fall from a blow. The girl was cut when she flew from a strong blow to the stomach. Without waiting, she launched herself at the girl who was stopping her advance, and when she saw him coming, she smiled. Throwing a full power punch, Naruto let it go to the side and hit the girl hard in the face, leaving her in shock from the blow. And taking advantage of this advantage, another blow landed on the girl's face and another one on her stomach, causing blood to spurt from Gawain's mouth. D-damn! She yelled angrily at the humiliation she was currently going through. Releasing her anger, she called her little axe to her hand and tried to cut the silver-haired man, who easily dodged the blow. You attack like an animal. If you keep going like this, you'll fall with the next blow, she said, easily dodging another slash. The girl simply ignored him and continued attacking, causing great devastation in the surrounding area. Stupid, she thought, and without mercy. A strong blow landed on the girl's stomach, but this one, unlike the others, was much stronger, causing Gawain to fall to her knees. Koko Haume. He didn't finish until one last blow to his chin from Naruto made him fall backward to the ground. Perfect in every way? I've fought people much tougher than you, the blonde said, his fist returning to normal, as did his right eye, which was the only one visible. Gawain on the ground raised his hand, which made Naruto look ready to knock her back down. But he didn't expect what came next. No! I haven't lost. My grandparents said I'm the strongest, and that's why it's true. There's no way you could have beaten me, she said as tears fell down her cheeks and she threw a tantrum that destroyed the ground around her and rocks flew everywhere, and a few hit Naruto who was left blank for the girl. The first step to winning is losing, accepting defeat, and improving from it. Judging by your reaction, it seems like this is the first time you've lost to someone. Well, it'll serve as an example, he said, grabbing Percival by his back and pulling him down. Meanwhile, his right eye turned orange, and without the seal appearing in his pupil, a golden aura began to cover his right hand. Rain of blessing, healing of Jacob, he said, raising his hand. White dust began to fall on Gawain, Percival, and surprisingly, Pelgard. Pelgard looked at his now healed wound and frowned. I'd expect it from the brat, but why are you doing this, and who are you? He asked, looking at the silver-haired man. Just one Knight of Lions, nothing more, and I'll heal you so you can get out of here quickly, he said, and Pelgard narrowed his eyes. Now that he noticed, neither Blade Kafka nor Silver Wolf chased him. They only let the children follow them, and although those children weren't that great, at least one of them would be sent against them. Naruto, seeing that he was done healing everyone there, began to walk back to Lion, leaving Gawain, Tristan, Pelgard, and Percival together. Everyone was healthy, and Gawain didn't have enough self-esteem to start another fight that he might lose. Neukat Ropsner Tellet, he said, making a hand seal and appearing next to Miss Kafka, who was walking toward a specific location. Did you feel it? The purple-haired girl asked, running from rooftop to rooftop. When I was going to help the boys against Pelgard, at first the witch camouflaged herself with Pelgard's armor and weapon. But now that he's out of the kingdom, it's crystal clear there's a direct user of chaos magic," she said, touching her left eye. For years, her eye reacted when someone used chaos magic or something created by chaos was too close to it. That's why she decided to cover her eye with her bangs. This way, she could be more at ease and not have to explain to everyone who saw it why her eye had transformed with a black iris. "Kafka finds Silver Wolf will help the castle, if the target can be King Baltra, while you will go directly for the threat in the center of the kingdom," he said while giving a strong jump and falling into a tower, leaving Naruto behind, who was wondering where Kafka herself would go. "Watching the next most viable option for them to attack is so obvious," he thought as he turned around and began running toward where the chaos magic was strongest. Chaos magic was nearly impossible to track, but thanks to his eye's strange reaction to magic, he could tell how close he was to the person or object emitting the magic. "Naruto, should I transform?" he asked. He didn't want to reveal his true identity of Naruto from Lion to Camelot. Since Blade has many enemies, he doesn't want his family involved in that just because he is Blade. "We are in Lion, that the prince of this kingdom helps is not strange at all," he thought, because it would be stranger if a criminal wanted by the Demon Kingdom, the Fairy King's forest, and thousands of other kingdoms helped a kingdom. It would be stranger and more suspicious. "Good. Just don't summon Blade, and I'll be able to keep my identity a secret," he thought, as he took one last leap, soaring over most of the houses, demanding to see where the problem started, and the magic grew stronger. In the place was a large creature with a head resembling an armor of a crimson color. The chest part of the creature was a dead gray and its feet were covered in darkness, demonstrating along with its wings that it is from the demonic clan. Beside him, a black-haired woman with white clothes and black spots on various parts was flying next to the creature, and thanks to the hood of darkness that covered her, Naruto noticed that she was also a demon. "Demons? Does Arthur recruit or imprison demons to fight with him now? Though that appearance seems familiar," he thought as he landed on a house very close to the problem. Both demons had similar descriptions to some demons from a history book he read a while back, though their hair and skin color denied that possibility, for now. "It doesn't matter. They must fall as quickly as possible. They're only making it harder for me to sense any other presences. That ability would be useful right now," he thought, a little angrily. The ability he was referring to was Topaz's. Differentiates any magic regardless of the amount used. The only way to not be sensed was to completely suppress magic, and any minimal use of it would draw the attention of the person who used the magic. Meanwhile, his sensory ability had a similar area power. With chaos users nearby, that ability went crazy and he stopped sensing everything to direct his senses to chaos magic, bothering his head a lot from all the yelling towards the chaos mob. "Good. I'll just use darkness, so I don't draw attention to myself," he thought as he clapped for the last time that day. Convergence, Maximum Supernova. Chapter 13. Convergence, Maximum Supernova. He said from one of the houses, creating a gigantic sphere of darkness that was launched at maximum speed against both demons in the distance who didn't seem to notice it yet. "I am Galen, Ancient Commandment of Truth and New Stag of Chaos." The crimson-armored leader introduced himself, while at his feet a headless corpse lay dead from his first blow. "What is that?" the demon asked, looking to the side where Naruto's sphere was arriving. Unrestrained, the sphere hit the place, causing a gigantic explosion that was heard in the distance, alerting more knights and the 4 knights of the apocalypse. Naruto, with his demonic purple eye, fell into the bubble of smoke created by their attack without a care in the world. With his hands in his pockets, Naruto looked at the prone bodies of the holy knights who had been with the demons at the time of the attack. Sacrificing your allies for a non-fatal hit is very cruel, especially for a human, don't you think, Galen? Naruto watched as the smoke screen cleared, revealing more corpses of holy knights, and the 2 demons weren't even scratched, something the lionés expected 100%. 1. They weren't my companions, I don't even know them. 2. Short in their suffering, they would die sooner or later. In your hands or someone else's, I only made them end up in mine, he said without interest as he took one of the completely destroyed bodies that was missing an arm and head, while a stench came out of it. Without importance, he threw the body to the demon named Galen, blocking his view, who pushed him away with a blow, destroying a tower. But when he returned with the silver-haired man, he did not see him in his former position. When, on his right side, he received a double kick from Naruto that sent him flying, leaving the black-haired demon. Very fast, very strong, and very smart. You're not a normal demon, are you? At the question, Naruto shrugged without interest. I'm not just a demon, but also a human and a goddess, he said without interest, looking directly at the woman, who seemed to smile even wider, though it was clear that the smile wasn't one of happiness. Demons alongside the goddesses? Don't make me laugh, brat. It doesn't matter if the demons have fallen. The goddesses wouldn't accept this, much less the supreme deity herself. Naruto sighed at this. The supreme deity also fell. And I don't have to go around giving explanations. After all, they'll die again, he said, angering Melascula, who watched intently as Naruto disappeared from his position. The demon named Melascula didn't flinch at all. In the distance, Galen emerged from some rubble, but without letting him recover, he was hit by another double kick from Naruto. Hello? Said the silver-haired man, standing over Galen's gray body with a calm and disinterested posture. The demon smiled at the boy. Very arrogant, aren't you, brat? He asked as he took Naruto in his arms. I just have to squeeze a little and you'll explore like the weak, defenseless creature you are, he said, smiling cruelly as he tightened his grip on Naruto, and although some bones cracked, the boy didn't explode like the demon expected. Galen frowned as he continued to squeeze under Naruto's disinterested gaze, who only sighed. Is this all? If you and your friend are just this much, you'll disappoint me. I thought you'd be a bigger challenge, he said as his visible eye changed to a golden color again, and his body began to release a holy aura. In the light, Galen's hands began to burn, causing the demon to frown in pain, but more in anger. Do you really think a little light will hurt me? I'm a chaos deer, this is nothing, he said, and Naruto didn't respond. Lying explosion, final miraculous flash, he said, and the golden aura began to increase. When suddenly the holy power around Naruto exploded into a gigantic column of light that covered more than 20 meters around, and the column was so high that it could be seen from outside the kingdom where Tristan, Percival, and Gawain were. That's a lot of holy power. Is Mom the one fighting? Tristan asked, because it was much more power than he could reflect. That explosion required a huge amount of light magic, and he didn't know any goddesses besides his mother and brother. Percival. That's a very large column of light. Is this a party? He asked doubtfully, like any innocent child. Meanwhile, Gawain, who had already stopped crying, took his sacred treasure, Lita, in his hands and frowned. It's that bastard. He had so much power, and he just played me, she thought angrily. Besides humiliating her, he also held back and didn't seem to go all out, of course, unless that large column said otherwise. Come closer. We'll be there in a jiffy, she said, determined to fight the boy or her enemies. This way, she'll prove that she's definitely the strongest. With Naruto. Naruto could be seen calmly leaving the crater, while, without letting it be known, he sighed a little exhaustedly. Most of his magic was sealed, and his holy and demonic power was reduced to over 25%. Using an attack that required so much holy magic was exhausting for his current state of magical power. At least he should have died, he thought, sitting on the shore, looking at the patches of darkness left over from the explosion. But the silver-haired man's eyes widened in surprise at what he saw. Apparently without difficulty. The dark stains on Galen began to coalesce, until, surprisingly, they gradually reconstructed the demon. At the speed he was going, he could have been rebuilt in 2 or 3 minutes. Now that's regeneration. Though less than mine, he thought as he stood up and checked his pants for dirt stains, but a voice confirmed it. You're clean, said a voice Naruto knew perfectly. Turning around, Naruto saw a girl with pale pink hair that was almost white on top. Her eyes were heterochromatic, with 2 colors in each pupil, starting with a light blue and ending with pink. Her clothing was a white dress on top and blue on the bottom, along with a pink camera on her hip. March, Naruto said, looking at his fellow hunter and student at the same time. even though he doesn't like to admit the latter. We're on a mission, so you must call me by March 7th at the earliest, Naruto-senpai. Geez, she said, crossing her arms as the silver-haired man looked on intently, sighing. Naruto, leave that for later. There's someone here who needs to be treated quickly, he said, looking at Galen, almost fully recovered. The girl known as March 7th, codename, and March, real name, looked at the demon. Wow, and I thought the creatures of chaos were ugly. This is really horrible, she said, laughing. Pulling the camera from his waistband, he snapped a photo of her and the demon, with Naruto in the background, his face blank. Really? I asked, and the girl shrugged. You have to keep memories, you don't always see a demon, she said, and Naruto looked at her with another, really, look that said it all. You live with a demon. He spoke, referring to himself. You don't count. You weren't raised as a demon, and your form is human, while they have strange forms. Naruto just shook his head at this. Just help me finish it. My magic power is at its lowest. I've wasted a lot of magic today. He spoke wearily as he became serious. He stood in front of a 100% healthy Galen. His regeneration is incredible. It's very similar to yours, March said, impressed by what he saw. Naruto, a demon can regenerate from nothing if they have a way to make their soul remain in the physical world. My regeneration comes from my demon side, since my immorality is only a tie to my soul, preventing it from entering purgatory. He explained to the girl, who nodded in fascination. Knowing how someone is immortal is always fantastic, especially since it's the only one she knows. So he survived because his soul is still here somehow? Naruto, yes. Seeing what happened earlier, and how his power suddenly appeared when chaos magic was used, it's likely his soul is still here from being summoned. That leaves the other demon as the summoner, he said as he created a layer of darkness, which confused March. Why aren't you using your weapon? He asked as he put away his camera. Arthur is probably seeing this. We can't show our true colors here. Posing as holy knights of lionesses is the only option. So anything that could be used to identify us as chaos hunters must be hidden, he said, and March pouted because he couldn't use his sacred treasure. He'd always wanted to use it against someone of this demon's caliber. Okay, though that means not using signature attacks too? Naruto nodded, and the girl snorted angrily. This is unfair. I won't be using my strongest attacks either. While you can use any tank power, you've never used demonic or holy magic against the Camelot Knights. Naruto smiled slightly. Having a wide arsenal has its advantages, he said, already determined to fight Galen, coating the tip of his sword with darkness and light. He launched himself at the demon. God Slayer, Dark Saint Blast! He announced his technique as the explosion hurt Galen far more than expected. Light and darkness together can break any defense, no matter how tough, remember that, Naruto said, the sword in his hand changing into a spiked mace. Naruto, God Slayer, Flash of the 3 stars of the underworld, he said, and slammed Galen into the ground. Another flash caused a huge explosion, leaving Galen a hole in the ground, as well as this Rosa against Tarmiel. You take my attacks pretty well for a demon. I have to theorize it's because of the chaos power they used to summon your soul. Galen, look who did the homework today. Very clever, right? He asked while clenching his fists, and a crimson glow shone. I never thought I'd use my magic power as soon as I came back to life, but here it is. Overcritical. Suddenly, the glow on Galen's body increased, and a giggle caught Naruto's attention. He looked up at the sky and saw Melascula looking at him in amusement. Hey, what's so funny? March asked angrily, bringing another smile to the demon's face. Galen's critical breakdown takes his body to the highest physical level it could reach, in other words, to its current limit. Worse still, that limit has increased, giving him the ability to double or triple his magical power. Naruto said nothing. It won't make that much of a difference, he said without interest as he prepared another sword made of dark matter. March, no bow, he whispered calmly, and the girl looked at him. March, you already said it. You know, you don't have to repeat everything like I'm a little girl, senpai, she said while expelling her magic. A cold air filled the place and a blizzard of ice whipped through the area. Good, temperature 0, winter wind, he said, smiling. And Melascula looked at the technique with doubt. An attack that lowers the ambient temperature. What good would that do for their battle? He thought doubtfully as he watched the event unfold. When the glow stopped coming from the green giant, a Galen with an even larger body and sharper edges emerged from the smoke created by his technique. I can stay in this form until my magic runs out, while you have almost no magic left. You have no chance, ha ha! Naruto, have you never heard that the more you talk, the less you do? If you're going to attack, do it now. The silver-haired man was cut off when, in a Gawain teleportation, Tristan and Percival appeared where the demons were. We came to help. Little Percival shouted excitedly. Meanwhile, Gawain and Tristan became serious upon seeing the threats. Are they chaos, dear? Tristan asked seriously, looking at the demons. Melascula, what do we have here? A genius born every 1,000 years? Or an everyday idiot? He said, laughing at the boy's obvious question. Anyone could tell they were chaos, dear, and asking that was stupid in many ways. Galen, in his perfect form, looked at Gawain seriously. That power? It's equal to that man. Will the one who defeated me be his heir? The red giant wondered, a cruel smile appearing in his mind. Brat, let me fight the black-haired girl for a while. Then you and I can go back to our meeting. Naruto turned to look at Galen, who was making him a proposition he didn't mind in the least. Naruto, after thinking about it, shrugged. You can do it if you want. Although she's not that great, I defeated her a few minutes ago easier than I would have you, he said, crossing his arms while Galen laughed at what he thought was a joke. Galen, don't worry. We'll check what you're saying later, now let me fight her, he said with a smile. While returning to his original form, he released his magic power and launched himself at the girl who looked at him surprised by his speed. But a flash of light caused her to step back as a goddess like Tristan stood in front of Gawain. I'm already thinking you like him, Naruto said as Tristan looked at him. What are you talking about? He said, embarrassed. Naruto rolled his eyes. Just saying, he thought as he sighed. Doesn't matter, just make sure you don't die to that thing, he said calmly. Galen smiled in front of them. So they're brothers? That makes them both demons and not humans, right? He asked, and Naruto looked at him seriously. Raising his hand, Galen spoke. My king forbade killing humans, he said as he lowered his hand, and Naruto opened his eyes in surprise and moved Tristan away from the path as if on command. All of Lion split in half. Meanwhile, in the distance, giants, hags, and druids died, cut in half, while in the battle. Tristan cracked his head from the impact he had suffered when he fell. Why did you do that, Nero? The white-haired man cut himself. In front of him, Naruto with a stripe down the middle of his chest was smiling as blood flowed from his mouth. And Naruto! He shouted, and at that moment, Naruto split in half. Chapter 14. Returning to where we left off. The silver-haired boy was literally split in half under the watchful eye of his terrified younger brother. Are you an idiot or what? Start moving or you'll die. The boy spoke to his brother as the darkness began to join both parts of his body, but as if he didn't want that to happen. Behind Naruto, a Galen appeared and, moving his hand, split the blonde horizontally, leaving the boy in 4 parts. Apparently lifeless, the boy fell to the ground, and Tristan, who was even more frightened, became angry. Damn! You're a bastard! He said angrily, his teeth chattering with anger. Then his eyes darkened and a 4-pointed star appeared on his forehead, revealing his demon mode was activated. I'm going to kill you! He said in a very hostile and cold manner to Galen, who smiled in response. Whenever you want, boy. Suddenly, hands of darkness appeared from the ground and began to attack everyone around them when Percival's friends retreated. Meanwhile, Gawain destroyed these hands easily using his golden magic that set fire to the hands when a distance of darkness from her, and consequently from everyone around her. Meanwhile, without importance, Tristan moved one of his swords that was one of his sacred treasures called Esterosa, being the twin part of the other sword male. With the movement the hands were cut off, leaving the pass free for the boy who, as if it were a game, flew out at high speed and pierced the chest of Galen, who hadn't even seen him. Turning back to attack, he didn't expect a column of light to strike Galen, and he destroyed him. Seeing the source of the attack, he saw his brother, now healthy, with his golden eyes but without the symbol of the goddesses. Naruto, okay, you can calm down now, Tristan, he said calmly while cracking his neck. I've recovered half of my current magic, that'll be enough to defeat these things, he thought, looking at the sky, where the summoner Melascula seemed to be stopped by Gawain and Percival's friends, along with Percival, who created wings from her power to fly. Is her magic hero type? How lucky, she thought, smiling as she looked at the boy. Would her magic be just as powerful as the boy's? Leaving that aside, he looked at Galen, who was already rebuilding himself. The light attack was somewhat weak compared to the other one that had completely exploded him. Tristan, you don't control the darkness. Stop using it, he said, his golden eyes glancing into his brother's purple-black ones, which seemed to be ignoring him, which made him frown in annoyance. I'm not suggesting it, Tristan. Leave the darkness now, he said when his eyes glowed gold for a few seconds, leaving their orange color behind, but soon returned to their original color. Even with the threat, the boy remained the same and challenged him to a staring duel. He was clearly willing to do anything to go against his orders. We should beat him until he stops, that way he'll learn his lesson. Naruto heard his own voice in his head. From the tone he knew it was his anger, speaking even though he ignored it. If you do something stupid, I'll stab you with my sword until it wears out. And my sword regenerates itself, he said seriously. With that, summoning her goddess wings, she flew above Galen, who seemed to look at her with a calm smile. Making a triangle with her hand, she placed Galen in the center of the figure and prepared for one of her most powerful attacks. Jacob's enlightenment purification! He screamed, and a torrent of light fell on Galen, who just smiled calmly. But that's why when he received the blow technique, his body began to burn, and suddenly he was affected by the blonde's technique. Everything around the attack lit up, blinding at times everyone close to the technique. Even Melascula had to cover herself in her cocoon of darkness by the great light, being surrounded by the young people when the light calmed down. Naruto, your arrogance is high and it cost you victory, he said calmly, descending from the sky after using the best technique for Galen at the moment. Jacob's enlightenment purification. A technique that judges the soul of the victim for its past sins and harms. If the soul is good, it increases its magical and physical abilities to the maximum for a period of 10 minutes. If the soul is evil, it causes the victim to receive the harm they have caused to others, both emotionally and physically, directly into the soul, leaving no room for healing. Also, this technique has nothing to do with whether you're sorry or not. You'll be judged the same. If you want to repent for what you did, the blow will be less painful but just as damaging, simply by reducing the pains so you don't suffer. And if you don't care about what you did, your suffering will be the same, no exceptions. Naruto, smiles, you are defeated. Even if you can regenerate 1 drop of blood for being a summoned, your soul suffered all the damage from my technique. Your body cannot regenerate a damaged soul without being aware of your soul, he said in front of a burned and very damaged Galen who could not even speak. The only indication of life were his bright green eyes. Naruto simply grabbed her head and, with her orange goddess eyes staring at him coldly, was about to yank it free. But she suddenly let go and kicked Galen in the face, sending him flying. Why did you do that? You could have killed him right there, Tristan said from behind, angrily, letting it show in his voice. Naruto turned to look at him, his eyes narrowed with clear, suppressed anger. He didn't like that tone toward him at all. She won't die from anything, she's a summon. Her soul is tied to the magical power of the other demon or some object, so she can only die if her soul is destroyed, the object is destroyed, or her summoner dies. Tristan, hearing that, approached Galen but was stopped by Naruto's hand, which was placed in his path. Absorbing her soul isn't very viable, it's infected by chaos, and we don't know what it will do to us, he said seriously, looking into Tristan's eyes. It was strange how the sweetest of the two had those demonic eyes, while the coldest had the eyes of an angel. Tristan just frowned and turned towards Melascula, who seemed to be playing with Gawain and Percival, while the others only moved away because of his uselessness/null contribution in the battle. No one besides Denny was doing anything, and he didn't do much. After all, he couldn't levitate something that big. Following his brother's gaze, Naruto spoke. She's not physically strong, but her magical power to revive people and her seemingly deep connection with darkness make her fearsome. Don't attack foolishly. If you do, you'll receive. Naruto didn't finish when a smokescreen rose from his brother's flight, earning him a frown. I still vote for it. So let's smash his face in. I'll go, voice said again in his head. But this time a second time spoke. It wouldn't be a bad idea. Teaching insolent brats a lesson isn't a bad thing once in a while, she said, and this time her calm did the talking. And to avoid starting a minutes-long conversation, she didn't respond to what was said. Covering in light, she flew out like a flash of lightning, catching her brother in the air, about to attack Melascula from behind, or so they planned. When she turned around, the demon smiled at the silver-haired man, who didn't seem to care, and when a kind of lightsaber tried to cut her down with a vertical slash. Or so he planned until the girl's voice rang out. Chaos Darkness Prison, she said, and at that moment, darkness covered Naruto, who was surprised, capturing him in a sphere of darkness, which later became a strange head with the characteristic touch of chaos. At that moment, Tristan, who had been surprised by what had happened, was hit with a palm of darkness, sending him flying, taking Percival with him. Tristan crashed into a ruined house, rubbing his head from the impact, while Percival, who had fallen on the upper floor of the house, seemed to faint or become unconscious. Not caring about this, he looked at his side at the almost destroyed Galen, who didn't seem to move or regenerate from the soul attack Naruto gave him, so he shouldn't be a threat for now, so he wasn't a priority. Returning to the battle against the woman, Tristan raised his sacred treasure called Astarosa, and attempted to cut Melascula in half. He didn't care, because he was only greeted by the darkness of the smiling demon. Prison of darkness, he said. When the same darkness took Tristan's arm, covering him in darkness like Naruto, but without turning into a head of strangeness, letting it be known that he didn't use chaos. Tristan looked around angrily. He had no patience at all. You shouldn't even call yourself a familiar of the Demon King. The mere fact of being a demon is shameful enough for our race. To be out of control because of your own darkness? That's just a demon's joke, she said. Melascula, behind Tristan, but when she hit it, it acted like a mirage and disappeared, then stood in front of the boy. I don't care whether I'm an honor to you or not, she said hostilely, trying to cut through the darkness, but nothing worked. Melascula, it's impossible, she said calmly. Not even Zeldris himself could escape without using the power of His Majesty the Demon King, she said, smiling as she watched from outside both prisons of darkness, one more powerful than the other. Until that moment, Naruto's prison began to rumble with apparent bangs or explosions from within, causing the demon to laugh. How cute, he doesn't have a chance to get out, and he's still trying, he said, smiling. Until little by little, cracks appeared in the prison of darkness that imprisoned Naruto, and from these cracks, reflections of light began to appear, until a holy explosion destroyed everything. And from this destruction, a Naruto with his eyes glowing orange and his power of light covering his wings, revealing some sort of wings of light that mimic real wings. Lying explosion, miraculous flash, he said calmly. A variation of the final miraculous flash. How did you do it? I asked surprised, and Naruto said nothing. He just scratched his head without interest. Even with chaos, even darkness is weak to light, so it's easy to destroy with a good amount of holy magic, he said, but he clearly thought differently. The variants of the lying explosion normally consume a lot of magic power, even with their quantity. Naruto, I don't like delays, so I'll finish them off. With that, his voice turned darker and his eyes took on their demonic tone again. I'll finish quickly, you won't feel any pain, he said, smiling in a less than friendly way. Melascula simply licked her lips with her snake-like tongue as she looked at the boy with a very interesting look. She can't fully use the demon mark, nor can she use the eyes of the goddesses. But even so, Her level of magic is at the level of a commandment, he thought, smiling with interest. Let's see, kid, how much you can do against me. Naruto took this as a challenge and smiled. Sure, prepare to lose. Chain of lament, first sob, he shouted, his eyes shifting between light and dark, causing several spheres of light and a larger one of darkness to shoot out. The spheres of light began to spin around the sphere of darkness, causing them to spin at high speed around each other, leaving a spiral of light and darkness. Melascula seemed to smile at the attack, when as if nothing happened he tried to block it with his darkness, but unexpectedly it pierced the darkness, causing him to have to dodge it at the last second. Before she could recover, Naruto delivered a powerful kick from above, sending her sprawling to the ground. The others scrambled to avoid the roar. But like a pillow, the darkness cushioned her impact with the Melascula floor. You're quick and clever, as expected from the Demon King's household. Elegido, the demon, took flight again before Naruto's attentive gaze. How interesting, isn't it? Light and darkness together are capable of penetrating any barrier. A fearsome power, especially in the hands of someone as capable as you. It's a shame you can't use the mark of the demon clan or the eyes of the goddesses completely. Even those imitations aren't that bad, she said with feigned sadness that didn't seem to bother the lionés at all. Naruto, if that's how insults were used 3,000 years ago, then I wonder how wars started. These insults seem more like flattery than anything else. Melascula smiled at his words and simply gave a single, distinct clap. Oh, how sweet you are, you really are a cutie. Naruto didn't buy what the woman said and continued to stare at her with his two eyes infused with light and darkness, demonstrating his fallen angel mode or Nephilim mode. Fall from the seventh heaven, betrayal of the sinner. Melascula braced herself for the attack, but it never came, and she looked at the boy with a doubtful look. Do you really think this is a game? Naruto looked at her without interest as he calmly scratched his head. Do you think I'll always attack you directly? The woman was confused by the question. Until she felt a huge amount of magic from the sky, and looking up she saw several swords or blades of darkness static in the sky but all pointing towards her, waiting for the order. Melascula, will you kill more humans just to hurt us a little? He asked, smiling. He certainly liked the boy. Throughout the battle, he had killed more Cubellos without caring, even going so far as to use techniques capable of apparently rotting someone. Naruto cringed. Death's for me, death's for you. Who's going to tell the difference? With that, she snapped her fingers, causing the swords to begin falling toward Melascula, who smiled playfully. She was going to cover herself with her cloak of darkness until the attack ceased. Or so the plan was, as a kind of mist obscured her vision, confusing her. Fog? Is it a distraction? She wonders in confusion when from one side of the fog, 3 gigantic purple lightning dragons came out to attack her directly, and because of her lowered guard she received the electric impact of the attacks. That made a shock of electricity miles away, and seconds later the swords fell on her, causing great destruction to the arena. As the smoke cleared, I revealed a Melascula damaged by the attack, but in the process of recovering the left arm she lost in the attack. What the hell was that? That bastard has a magical lightning power? She wonders doubtfully, but that had to be abandoned when purple threads apparently tried to bind her, but she moved quickly, covering herself with her darkness. Electric shock, said the purple-haired and beautiful Kafka, walking down one of the streets toward the fight. Looks like you needed me, Naru, said Kafka, trained on stage. Naruto looked at her without interest as she gave a cold greeting. What happened back there? I felt a demonic-like magical power a while back, he asked calmly, but footsteps behind him caught his attention slightly. The real target of all this was a prisoner of Chaos. Unfortunately, he was killed before we arrived, said a calm Lancelot coming from the same direction where Naruto felt the demonic magic. Kafka, have you seen Syl? She disappeared a while ago and I haven't seen her again, said Kafka as his sword appeared in his hand. I couldn't tell you. Since coming back from fighting Pelgard, I haven't seen that wolf. She probably went to sleep or play somewhere far from here, he said without interest. The girl knew how to take care of herself. There was no need to worry. Kafka looked around the field to make it easier to analyze everything. A dying demon, unable to regenerate, in a destroyed house. Another demon hiding in a cocoon of darkness. Damaged, fatigued, and possibly poisoned children. One in an unconscious house. Naru's younger brother trying to help the youngsters. And March is healthy. He thought, watching the girl from a cloak in the distance, hidden from many except her. It seems this is harder than it looks, he said jokingly, laughing a little. So tell me, Naru, why aren't you fighting for real? He asked, smiling as he approached the boy. Naruto, NASA, specifically Miss Kafka. It's possible King Arthur is watching this through them, so it's best to kill them without revealing ourselves to him. The woman understood the point, so she magically made her sword disappear, and in its place, she pulled out a sword from the ground that was very different from the one she used, but a swordsman would be a swordsman with any weapon. Naruto, fine, my plan is simple. Fight them as hard as you can until I can deliver the finishing blow, he said calmly. Looking at March hiding in the distance, he made a number 3 sign with his fingers that the girl understood. March, my time has come. The girl smiled as she summoned an artifact, which opened immediately, creating a seemingly technologically advanced bow. The girl created an ice arrow to attach to the bow and prepare for an attack. With Naruto and Kafka. These two were seen ready waiting for Melascula's dome to open, or that was the plan. Since this dome exploded in darkness covering the view of both. Melascula not being seen passed by Naruto, causing a cut in his chest, and continued straight to head towards Galen. Or so he thought when an ice arrow cut his head cleanly, letting it fly away while the body fell inert on the ground before the attentive gaze of Naruto and Kafka. Chapter 15. And there goes one. Who's next? March, who had shot at the house from a distance a while ago, proudly asked. Naruto looked at this and said nothing. Did you know I was going to shoot now? The plan was for me to do it later, he asked Kafka, who nodded with a smile. I look for a blind spot and wait for the right moment, even ignoring orders due to the situation. It seems she's not as new as she used to be. You have a good student, Naru, the woman said, smiling as she usually did, and giving the lion native a little hug. Although he didn't respond, he didn't do anything to her either, something that always happened between them. Naruto nodded and gave a small smile. She's probably officially joining the group, he thought, looking at the girl, happy with her perfect long-range shot, a remarkable achievement considering the distance and speed at which everything happened. Naruto gave a small sigh as he turned off his goddess and demon powers. Healing the cut on his shoulder from Melascula, he and Kafka walked toward the group of young people, most of whom were lying on the ground, apparently ill. What happened? Naruto asked, seeing that Percival and Dunny, the boy/girl with the hat and brown hair he didn't know, and Isolde were lying on the ground with sweat on their foreheads. They're poisoned. Apparently she used some poison from the demonic realm to affect them. I can't cure them with normal goddess magic, he said, because not even his best healing technique, Twinkle Star, was working at the moment. Naruto, use purification. It's the best for poisons, he said while cleaning his jacket, which had been badly damaged on the shoulder by the demon's slash at him. Tristan, I already tried. But I'm not as good at it as Mom, so it's best to call someone else, Sirio said. He didn't mean to put his friends' lives at risk by refusing to accept that he couldn't. It was best to call someone more experienced with poisons. As if on cue, an older man with white hair and green eyes wearing all-white clothing walked toward them. Guys! Are you all right? I came as quickly as I could since the attacks and fighting stopped, said the man named Henriksen, the former Holy Knight Master of Lionés and godfather to Naruto and Tristan. Henriksen, thank God. We need you. There are some poisoned people here, Tristan said, pleased to know that the most suitable person was the one who came at this moment. Henriksen, sure, just let me do a quick checkup and I'll get my antidotes, he said, approaching the group, until his green eyes fell on a head of white hair with some kind of golden crown, even with half his face covered by the lock, his face more toned with age, dead eyes, and a serious expression. The former knight easily recognized the person in front of him. Henriksen, Naruto. The lion native greeted him with a calm, I am Uncle Henriksen. A very calm gesture, which surprised the man even more. Even if Naruto wasn't what many called energetic as a child, he wasn't a calm person either. How much difference does it make if you are a godson? You alive? But since when? How? He asked, upset to know that the boy who was kidnapped 7 years ago was now standing in front of him as if nothing had happened and apparently with girlfriends. Naruto made a sign that let him know to leave it for later. He wasn't going to accept, but he remembered the poisoned ones and let it go. Okay, I'll look at this for a few seconds and dash. She couldn't finish when Naruto raised his hand and summoned a green dome over Gawain and Percival. Purification, he said calmly, and both the damage, as well as the fatigue and sweat on the two boys' foreheads, disappeared, and they were now calm. Gawain's body began to shrink, causing her clothes to become smaller, and being so destroyed by her fight, leaving her almost naked. Naruto watched this last bit without interest as Tristan took off his yellow jacket to try to cover the girl. Fufufu, don't look at Naru. She's a little girl, Kafka said amusedly as the silver-haired man nodded. March 7th had already arrived, looked at this with a pout at Kafka's dominance in Naruto. Tristan, after covering the sleeping girl, left her in Henriksen's hands, who carried her to a place where she could rest more peacefully. Good, finish healing them and then we can all go rest, Tristan said as he helped the tired Percival to his feet. Naruto looked at his brother without interest. My orders are about taking care of the Knights of the Apocalypse, the rest is none of my business, he said, arms crossed. Kafka chuckled at the way his Nara said it while March, alone, continued with a pout of envy because Miss Kafka was very close to his sensei Naruto. Tristan and Percival were so shocked by what Naruto had said that Percival put aside his sleep and looked at him worriedly. But if you don't do something, they'll die. Naruto, it's not my problem, things have calmed down now, some healer will be able to help you enough. Yes, but not like your brother. No one in Lion can cure purgatory poisons like this. Only Mother can, and she's very far away. By the time we tell them, they could die. Naruto understood, but he still didn't care. Percival, worried, used his magic to try to heal his friends, but it was in vain. Without the hope booster his friends gave him, hero-type magic wasn't as effective as before, seemingly making no difference to the poison victim's condition. The boy began to cry at this. They're going to die. Seeing this, Tristan got angry at Naruto and grabbed him by the collar. What the hell is wrong with you? They're about to die, and you're not going to do anything. Naruto's eyes, which had gone from calm to cold and annoyed when Tristan grabbed him by the neck, stared at his brother, not speaking of good intentions. Let me go, Tristan. I won't give you a second chance. The boy seemed to get angry at his brother's response. What the hell? I'm telling you to save him, he said angrily at his brother's arrogant attitude. I don't care if you give second chances or not, I'll cure them. Without saying anything else, Naruto with his heterochromatic eyes stared into the same heterochromatic eyes of his brother. Both twins did not seem to give in to the pressure of the other, but Naruto. Tired of this, he suddenly raised his magical power, causing a massive tremor around him, and with his eyes glowing red, a type of Mayama affected the environment and everyone present. Tristan managed to survive the Mayama along with Percival, but apparently the poison victims weren't so lucky. They all began to complain of the Mayama affecting their lungs. Yeah, being upset. Naruto with an angry look forcefully grabbed Tristan's hand and squeezed it so hard that the sound of bones breaking was heard by Percival, who was shocked. In pain, Tristan let go of his brother and fell to the ground holding his seemingly broken wrist. It's not my duty to heal them, if you're a weakling who can't do something as simple as extract poison. I don't know how you expect to defeat King Arthur, he said, his face darkening and his tone very, very cold, which frightened Percival a little, given the older lioness's expression. His brother's words shocked Tristan. He stood still, ignoring the pain, clenching his fist in anger at being indirectly called a weakling and unfit for his role as a knight of the apocalypse. What she says is true, he thought furiously. Although no one else told him so, everyone probably thought so. His father never trusted him for big things, he barely trusted him enough to let him go look for Gawain, and even then, he kept the Fairy King and his wife investigating him. While Lancelot, who was looking for Percival, only had Gowther, who didn't even really investigate him because for them, Lancelot would do it well. His mother and father treated him like a child who hadn't matured. They simply thought he was too small for the world and preferred to put their hope in everyone, except their own son. It's always the same. Until when will they stop underestimating me? He thought angrily as his demonic four-pointed star mark thundered in anger. Naruto noticed this, and raised his hand slightly to hit his brother's neck as he lay on the ground. But he simply let it go. Knocking him out would only make him angrier when he woke up. Relieving that stress now was the best thing to do. Percival, still crying over the possible death of his friends, was being comforted by March. The pink-haired girl with heterochromatic eyes didn't know what to say to the boy through her tears. Naruto had always been that way, and she knew he'd only heal them if Kafka herself asked him to, but the woman didn't see any interest in them, so she wouldn't. March 7th, well, I'm sorry. Naruto looked at this and sighed wearily. My magic is very depleted. If I heal them and something else happens, I'll leave the battle to rest. So you'll be responsible for what happens, you're dead and everyone else's, understood? Percival, who was the one Naruto was talking to, looked at the older silver-haired man in surprise, then smiled and hugged Naruto's legs. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Naruto didn't respond to the hugs and simply raised his hand, from which, instead of being the same green glow as before, a golden aura began to emanate, and as if on command, the fatigue, damage and sweat of Percival's friends along with the soul disappeared. Antidote, Naruto said with his goddess eyes active. The boys began to stand up little by little, making Naruto stop his magic spell on them and Percival leave his foot to hug his trio of friends, while the soul began to adore Tristan as always while he was, apparently angry or upset. Maybe with me, Naruto thought. Percival, look, nations. He can cure poisons like you, the boy said, surprising his partner with this. Her surprise subsided when she saw Tristan's eyes similar to those when he activated his goddess mode. Nations, she's a goddess. They're the best at this, said the girl/boy, sitting down to rest, the mental stress of that poison equal to the poison itself. Naruto, I'm leaving now. Don't expect me to help you for the rest of today unless it's super important, Naruto said as he took a step to leave, or that was the plan back then. Instantly Naruto's head rolled along with a pool of his blood. No one, absolutely no one had seen the sudden attack coming because they had let their guard down. After all, the threats died, or so they thought. In front of everyone, a colossal serpent that, based on past readings, must have been the true form of Melascula, although it seemed more mutated than it should have been. Perhaps due to chaos. Melascula, now everyone will die slowly. The voice sounded evil and sadistic, like the demon's true form. Kafka, March 7th, and Tristan were the first to react. An ice dagger shot out, stabbing the snake in the chest, causing it to scream. March 7th, drilling, he said when the ice embedded in the snake exploded into snowflakes, which started a freezing rain in the area, causing a slight chill to those present in addition to March. March, area attack. Zero breathing, he said, smiling at his attack. Zero breathing caused the ice to slowly freeze the moisture in the air in my lungs, making me unable to breathe. And when I finally froze his lungs completely, I could cause ice spikes to shoot outwards, killing the enemy instantly. Kafka, you need to choose those attacks more carefully. An area attack on vulnerable allies isn't a good option, the woman said with a kind voice and a deceptive smile that made the pinkette nervous. I am sorry, Miss Kafka. I got excited, he said, turning his face away as he cancelled the ice technique, allowing everyone to return to room temperature. March just snorted at her blush. It's surprising how Kafka was able to make even women fall in love with his beautiful face. Tristan, hey, Naruto shouldn't have healed like he did before, he asked worriedly, seeing his brother's head, whose eyes were covered in blood, like a dead person, which caused a slight scare in everyone. Kafka looked at this curiously. This is the first time he's received a mortal wound without the magic to regenerate. I don't know if he'll regenerate or not, she said, arms crossed, unsure of what would happen to her Neru. Tristan was surprised by the possibility. Even his anger vanished upon hearing the possibility that his brother was dead. Wait. Does that mean I could have actually died? He asked, frightened, looking at his brother. He barely recovered it, and it's already dead. That must have been impossible. It survived being cut in half. A decapitation is nothing, right? Lancelot looked at the body seriously. His regeneration was incredible. No demon should survive such deadly attacks like him. But his weakness is his lack of magic? And he's never run out of magic before until now? This doesn't add up. The red-eyed boy thought, looking at Kafka. He's probably hiding something. The woman didn't seem the least bit scared. What are you looking at? Everyone was surprised by the voice. When, instead of the head lying on the ground, it would speak. What spoke was a new head emerging from the body, stretching its neck as a warm-up. Although this revealed the strange marks on its neck from movement. How? Regenerate your head. Is that even possible? Asked the younger lioness, more than surprised and shocked by what he saw. Lancelot, the point of it all is, how did you regenerate if you didn't have the magic to do it? He asked, approaching Naruto, who was getting up from the ground and shaking his shirt, which was now damaged by all the cortez from Melascula and Galen. Naruto, the explanation isn't very interesting. So you shouldn't give it importance, he said without interest, and Lancelot, who tried to read his mind, looked him straight in the eyes. Naruto kept his face blank with apparently no intention, emotion or feeling. It was blank, making it impossible for Lancelot to read his mind for now. Tisk, fine, he said as he left Naruto. Kafka approached Naruto, who looked at her with his heterochromatic eyes. The woman caressed his cheek and gave him a small hug, which Naruto took calmly. While behind them, the others watched this with chibi faces, because technically everyone could tell that they were both in love with each other. It seems that you can regenerate if you die completely. Naruto scratched his head while giving an unusual chuckle, which surprised Kafka a little. The blonde never smiled except for her. And that was only when they were both alone and alone with no one else. Naruto, it's not quite like that. Today I discovered something even better than that, I think, he said thoughtfully. What he discovered was interesting but not good. Leave the flirting for later, that thing's ready again, said a voice from a house. Sylvie, Kafka greeted the little girl who was chewing her gum without interest, as she always did. This led to occasional arguments with March due to his expression of utter disinterest in problems. Naruto looked at Silverwolf, who had his hand on his hip, while a hologram appeared next to him, causing her to be teleported downstairs. What were you doing until now, Silver? Silverwolf, the king asked me for a favor regarding the former King Blatra. I just finished that assignment, he said as he walked towards his companions. As March drew closer, he was anything but friendly with the gray-haired girl, and his eyes showed it. And what happened? The magic disappeared and reappeared. Kafka, in short, Chaos revived her, but with chaos. Kafka smiled at the best explanation he could come up with. Naruto's sweat dropped at the summary, which wasn't very helpful, but at least he got the basics straight. Just killing him is no big deal, Silverwolf said with a confident smile. Naruto agreed and nodded. With everyone here, it'll be easier, although you'll have to avoid some very characteristic attacks like your magic power, he said, pointing at Silverwolf. The girl frowned in response. Nor will I stop using my magic. Reality is my game, and without my magic, I won't be able to play, she said, frowning. Naruto sighed at having to explain, or so he thought. Kafka intervened. Sil, obey please. The woman's eyes flashed for a split second alongside Silverwolf's, causing him to frown at the order he couldn't contradict. Good, at least I can use my weapon. Naruto, well, you see. Silverwolf, fine, I won't use my weapon, she said, annoyed, crossing her arms. Tristan watched this with a hint of anger at the hacker's tantrum. She really was behaving like a child. Since she's feared by Camelot, her attitude is just like Gawain's, he thought, looking at the girl who gave him a death glare, making the boy even more nervous. Percival, and she's like a little girl, isn't she? the green-haired boy said, causing Silverwolf to look at him with a deathly expression. Did you call me a girl? She asked, looking at the green-haired boy in a very angry way. Naruto, seeing this, simply touched the girl's shoulder. It's not about that part of you, it's about your attitude, he said, trying to calm her down. The girl always got angry when people talked about her smaller body for her age of 16, even when that wasn't the topic. Silverwolf frowned, still angry. I'm not a child in this area either, she said, still angry, looking at Naruto, who sighed, trying to end one problem and start another. Naruto, I never said you were, just that sometimes you take things too seriously, he said, skillfully diverting the conversation, although I don't know the best way. The pink-haired girl with the date's name looked at the blonde, angry at what she thought was the worst comparison she had ever made. March, hey! I'm not immature, I'm just enjoying life, she said, annoyed by the comment from her sensei, senpai, leader, friends, and 1,000 other things. Snarl. The sound made everyone turn to look at Melascula, who was slowly healing his wound. This will be a problem. Now with more chaos power, it will be a bigger problem, Tristan said, putting himself on guard. Kafka chuckled as he tightly gripped the sword he'd taken from a corpse earlier. Don't worry, it'll be faster than before, he said as he swung his sword. A slash of magic shot toward Melascula, who stepped aside, but didn't even touch Kafka, who was standing behind her this time. Goodbye, she said sweetly. Meanwhile, he cut off his head and made it fall to the ground. Lancelot, Tristan, and Percival were amazed because none of the trio could see Kafka's speed as he left them and headed toward Melascula. How did he move so fast? Lancelot looked even more seriously at Naruto, March, Silverwolf, and Kafka. There really are more of them than I thought. Now I know why they're feared throughout Camelot, the Demon Realm, and Britannia. They're monsters in power, but why are they hiding? The boy wondered. The 3 of them, and with Silverwolf, 4 of them, could have finished off Melascula in a jiffy without anyone doing anything. But besides not using their magical powers, they didn't use any powerful weapons or spells. They only attacked with strange, uncharacteristic magic. Could they be hiding? But from whom? Elsewhere. You could see Arthur Pendragon, King of Camelot and Bringer of Chaos, sitting on his throne calmly, while to his left was Ironside standing and to the right was a purple-haired girl standing calmly, while in front of Fu Xian she was standing, saying about what she just saw in Lioness. Arthur listened attentively with a smile, then calmly stood up from his throne and began to walk. The young prince is alive and has amazing powers, right? Right, in Fu Xian. Bring her to him, he said with a smile at the surprise he was thinking. Let's go visit the Knights of the Apocalypse. Chapter 1, Episode 2. The Chaos Hunters could be seen together with Tristan, Percival, and their friends. Meanwhile, Lancelot looked doubtfully at Naruto, Kafka, Silverwolf, and March, who were talking quietly among themselves. Tristan looked at Lancelot doubtfully. Is something wrong, Lancelot? He asked his almost cousin, who stopped looking at Naruto and his team. I don't think they're good, he said, putting his hands in his pockets. Tristan looked at his brother and smiled a little nervously. They're the only criminals Camelot herself has classified as the most dangerous and fleeing at first glance. Their danger doesn't surprise me. But Naruto said he has orders to protect us, so I'm not worried, the kind boy said, heading back to his healed friends, while Lancelot, still not very confident, continued to stare at Naruto and his companions. And although the older lion native noticed the look on him, he simply ignored it. Kafka, should we go rest? How about a bubble bath, Naru? I asked, looking at the white-haired man, who closed his only visible eye and nodded without saying much. Silverwolf, you two have a great connection for partners, don't you? Especially when you're older than him. The Silverwolf said with a narrowed gaze, and although she didn't want to agree with him, March agreed. Kafka smiled sweetly. Nara doesn't complain about always being with me, does she, Nara-chan? He asked, and the lion native didn't respond, simply because he didn't respond. Responding like that would make his other classmates, mostly Martians, start arguing for no reason. Hey, don't ignore the question, sensei, March said, looking at Naruto. But before they could start the topic again, Tristan approached the group of Chaos Hunters. "Hey bro, we're thinking of heading back to the castle. What do you think?" the long-haired boy asked. Since they had already agreed on that, the boy with one visible green eye simply nodded in agreement with his brother's choice. "Silverwolf, I hope you have a comfortable room," the hacker whispered, chewing gum comfortably. Kafka mentally said the same thing, but he knew he'd be sleeping with his Naruto. Clearly, he'd have a soft room, or so he hoped. All the young men began walking toward Lionés' castle, leaving the holy knights to do their sole duty after they took care of everything. Or so they all hoped, as several, if not all, stopped, and an aura of pressure covered the surroundings, consuming all of Camelot. Turning around, Naruto and almost the entire kingdom watched as something unimaginable fell from the sky. That's a ladder coming down from the sky," Percival spoke in astonishment, looking at the sky from where a staircase was created, clearly possessing high-level matter manipulation powers, since the clouds themselves were transformed into the stairs. Although what surprised more people was who came down the stairs. "Is that who I think it is?" Tristan asked, gripping his sword tightly. And in response Naruto nodded to speak. "Yes, King Arthur." Naruto spoke, his brow furrowed at the man. He had some scores to settle with both the king and some of his subordinates. "My revenge will be fulfilled." She heard Naruto in her head and knew who it was, so she ignored him. "Silverwolf, I never thought King Arthur himself would come here. He must have an interest in something," Silverwolf said, looking at the man. If he could use his weapon, he would send him a beam of energy at maximum power. "Silverwolf, what are you doing?" the girl with the permed hair asked, confused, listening to a speech. Naruto listened to the entire speech with a blank face. "He's clearly trying to convince everyone to go to his desired realm, but do you really think we'll let him leave after all this?" he asked, raising an eyebrow as a layer of darkness once again formed on his arm. And that was again covered in darkness at the tip. Although a hand on his shoulder stopped him. "We shouldn't rush. Wait a moment longer, it's better to go with a distraction," Kafka said with a smile, calming the boy, whose face was serious. "Good." She obeyed without a problem when Mach, at her side, prepared his bow to launch an attack at the king. "As soon as I fire, attack," the girl said, aiming as precisely as possible at this distance. Aiming perfectly at someone who was almost 70 kilometers away was no easy task, especially when you had to wait for them to not be looking in a nearby position. At one point, Naruto and Tristan exchanged serious glances. They both had their respective demonic powers active, as they were the best in terms of raw power. "Let's go in 3. Tristan's mark grew larger and appeared under his eyes, while Naruto's didn't even appear, but he remained ready by controlling the darkness. Naruto prepared himself as wings grew. -2. Tristan drew both swords ready for battle. -1. Already. That said, at breakneck speeds, March's arrow flew at King Arthur, though, as expected, Arthur held it in place for a single second, as the arrow traveled toward the king. Although for that reason, I don't expect it to happen. Naruto and Tristan are on each side, ready to hit him with their blades. But in a single movement, both seemed to have been discarded. Like toys, Naruto flew off to a distant mountain, and Tristan was sent back to the kingdom. In the kingdom, everyone stared as if he were a meteorite. Tristan was crashing into a castle somewhere, falling heavily, leaving everyone stunned. "They just disappeared from our sight, but he dismissed them so easily. Do we really have a chance against them?" Percival was frightened. Apparently King Arthur's display of strength was simply frightening. He humiliated 2 of the strongest of all the Lionés knights as if they were both mere flies. Kafka looked at this with a more serious look, but without losing his smile. "I think now is the time to create a plan, Kafka-sama," said March, frightened by how her master was simply discarded. "Silverwolf, Naruto and Tristan are unconscious, that leaves us available. So what do we do?" Silverwolf asked, starting to think of something. "I don't have enough points for anything good enough to damage him, plus I wouldn't be able to use my ability either, and since I have nothing else to use, I'm out." Kafka, My lightning techniques aren't good enough. My threads will be recognized by His Majesty. So all we have left is boy. Lancelot raised an eyebrow at how the Chaos Hunter's gaze fell on her. They're hiding their power from Arthur, so that means they won't attack themselves. He thought calmly before answering. Yes? He spoke too calmly for the situation. I need you to talk to King Meliodas for a few moments. He's the best person to face Arthur right now, he said, and Lancelot nodded. I thought he would ask him to fight, but seeing how Naruto and Lancelot were dismissed, I could say that he wouldn't do much. He could last longer, but that didn't mean that defeating him was a very valid option. Sure, though I'll have to get a few miles closer. From here, I can't connect minds with my own, he said calmly as he flashed toward the castle. Just a few seconds and he'd be far enough away. Percival, but what are we going to do about King Arthur? He's staring at us, he said worriedly. But Kafka, still calm, replied. He'll distract him long enough. Confused by what the lady said, Percival was surprised when, in a flash of darkness, Tristan flew berserk-like against the placid King Arthur. Will he be able to hold him off long enough? Kafka, no, but you'll help him, he said, laughing, as he made some threads wrap around the boy. As if on command, he flew off, his magic completely covering his body in the form of wings. Hey, don't control Percival, Annie said, annoyed to see how the young man was being manipulated by the woman who was a known murderer or genocidal maniac. Kafka smiled at the girl's cry, as he usually did. Don't worry, I'll help him use his power better. That way we can hold out longer than before. In the meantime, march, find a blind spot and keep throwing out dates, but don't let him notice you, he said calmly. And obeying, the girl shot off to find the perfect angle for her dates. It had to be on one of the eastern or southeastern sides of the kingdom, since they were the best blind spots in the kingdom. Okay, everyone else try to survive, he said as he began the battle controlling Percival, which could not be called a battle since the king of Camelot was dismissing the boy as if it were nothing while giving a speech to the other humans of the kingdom. Apparently, his plan upon arriving was to convince civilians, or humans in general, to join him in his eternal kingdom. It was a bit foolish, to be honest, since even though several of them would join him, there was no guarantee that they would succeed, and that put him at a disadvantage. Kafka, maintaining the kingdom with the here, opening its dimension to connect with ours in a flow of fused space-time fabric. He must not be at his best, but he's still dismissing the horse of the apocalypse of death and plague. A smile appeared on the purple-haired woman's lips. How are you, Naruto? Elsewhere. In the mountains far from Lionés was a large crater very deep within the mountain, where a Naruto with hair dyed almost entirely by blood seemed unconscious, while one side of his head was completely destroyed. Perhaps because of King Arthur's blow, perhaps because of the impact with the mountain that fell through the crater, which wasn't at all gentle. Both were equally possible and equally important at this moment. That wasn't much, really. Returning to the topic, the unconscious Naruto was regenerating the wound, although his body did not move in the slightest, seeming to be completely asleep or dead for experts. But that was only on the outside, as inside the lioness it was something completely unknown location. We found ourselves in a crimson landscape, where both the ground and the sky were a shade of crimson within. And the wind blew like an eternal storm, with what seemed like earth in the air but was actually miasma, and next to the red sun and the blood moon in the sky. It made it abundantly clear that he was in the demon realm, a realm where nothing but the highest level demons and angels can enter without losing lifespans. And where the current demon king, Meliodas' brother Zeldris, ruled alongside his vampire wife Gelda. In this kingdom, more specifically, in one of the many villages of the demonic realm, Naruto is found looking around in confusion. Not only because he was suddenly here when he was previously standing in front of King Arthur, but also because no one seemed to notice his presence. Perhaps that was because, in addition to everyone passing through him like a ghost, the massacre taking place there also had a lot to do with it. Beams of light and magical spells of light shot out into the distance, killing everything and everyone who might be nearby. And the few who apparently wanted to die, who noticed it was a humanoid lion, ended up being disintegrated by crimson slashes that seemed to exist in the same space. Naruto, that cut blade. Naruto tried to summon his sword, and sighing in relief he saw that he managed to get his weapon out of his dimension of any desired size. Naruto, this is strange, I'm in the demonic realm, I seem to be a soul and there's a massacre happening around here. Did I die? No, Hiria went back to purgatory, not the demonic realm. Naruto whispered to himself. As he walked thoughtfully, unconcerned about the bodies falling around him and how the attacks weren't getting to him either, he completely ignored it. That means, even if I wanted to, I'm not dead. So this must be an illusion. He wondered, but he also dismissed it. Another vision? No, the first one I had was first person, not as a spectator. So, Naruto activated his demonic power, turning his eyes to that black with the purple touch representative of darkness, while using his blade sword to block. Another blade sword? Naruto, what the hell? The boy's thoughts went wild when he saw the wielder of the other blade, and it was exactly the same one. Though he was younger, at 12 years old, if his height was anything to go by. Although the strange thing was that, in addition to his long hair and completely black armor-like clothing with a purple gem in the center, his eyes were black in the sclera and purple in the pupil. Just like Naruto's left eye was right now, pulsing with power like it usually did when a chaos magic user or chaos artifact entered its tracking area. Unknown, what's up, brat? Naruto opened his eyes. The voice was the same, to a certain extent due to the age difference. Who are you? Does Arthur play such dirty mind games? Asked the lioness, stepping back and holding blade in one hand, holding it out in front of him as a threat. Unknown, Brad, Arthur is way too trusting for that, but this isn't a mind game or anything. It's just a more appropriate visit to the place where I end my tour of your current power. The younger Naruto said calmly, who clearly wasn't Naruto and was just someone controlling his body. So you were the one who controlled me for 3 years, right? Why? And what am I doing here right now? Naruto asked. Lowering the sword, Blade calmly knew that nothing would happen. The stranger using his body had no plans to attack or they would already be fighting. Use the right stage for the right moment. Isn't it better to show up in a place where chaos abounds? Naruto was confused by the words of the stranger using his body. What does the chaos here have to do with you? Besides, you probably started it, of course? Naruto asked, crossing his arms. Unknown, don't tell me you're just like that, brat Arthur. It's not that hard to put 2 + 5 together and get 3. Said the unknown, and Naruto with a drop of sweat rolled his eyes. Oh god, 2 + 3 isn't 3, you moron. You know what? Just forget it. I'm not in the mood to play guess it all. You know? What do you want, who are you, and why am I here? He demanded now, his left eye, its black sclera and purple pupil glowing unconsciously. And that caused the stranger to smile. Unknown, apparently your affinity with me is equal to or stronger than that human brat's, but it's obvious. He said as a demonic smile appeared on his face, demonstrating his sadism. You are a Nephilim, an aberration that defies the order of good and evil. You are like chaos itself. Like me? The stranger said, smiling even wider than before. Meanwhile, Naruto, this time much more serious, began to put the pieces together, and the craziest idea came to his mind, as demonstrated when his heterochromatic eyes opened wider than ever. And taking a step back, Naruto raised his blade again as a threat to the stranger. Are you implying that you are chaos itself? What Naruto said made the already noticeable smile of the stranger using his body confirm that he was right, which made him hesitate a little in his next actions. Naruto, if that's true, how the hell are you here? And more importantly, why do you appear to be me and not even have a conscience? Naruto's words, coming cautiously but firmly, earned him a shake of his head from the man now known as Chaos himself. The entity that created both heaven and earth, the demonic world and the heaven of angels. The one who gave life to the first giant, the ancient demon king, and the former supreme deity. He who is responsible for King Arthur's enormous power, which is at a level far above any common living being, only matched by a few very few warriors. That entity that transcends the concepts of death, life, time, space, distance, and movement. A being that, hates being everywhere and nowhere at the same time. That was the god and entity of chaos that Naruto had in front of him at that moment. Chaos, first, Edgar's point here is because I look like you, and it's obvious I'm inside you. Or at least connected to you, which is the same thing. Naruto frowned at those words, which only made him even more doubtful. But he didn't interrupt, so he could let the chaos continue. Secondly, I've always been a conscious being. It's more than obvious. Nothing can create without thinking, nothing can form without understanding. Nothing can give life without wanting to give it. Naruto, that means? I asked, raising an eyebrow. I knew what it was, but I had to look for an answer even in the most obvious, and chaos knew that. Everything I created, I did knowing what I was doing. Everything I formed, I did knowing what I was doing. And the life I gave because I wanted to, not unwillingly. The god or personification of chaos wrote it all down. Naruto nodded, already knowing that, but now he was gripping his chin in doubt. If you're inside me, that means how long have you been here exactly? He asked, while out of the corner of his eye, he saw that the massacre in the great village continued, as he had been told, that you were merely a memory playing out on the stage that should have been his mind. Where he, or rather chaos, using his body, was killing everyone around him for anything that didn't interest him. Chaos, since the beginning of time, since your birth, since your death, since your formation, since before the Demon King existed. Since the world ceased to exist until when it began to exist. Naruto frowned, not understanding anything Chaos said. Don't try to place me below that idiot called logic. I am chaos and I am above everything you know, both physically and spiritually as well as conceptually. Naruto felt without understanding much. Well, what am I doing here? I asked, frowning. I just want to tell you one thing, you have a lot of competition. Chaos spoke, leaving Naruto very confused. Competition? The white-haired lion native wondered, looking at himself, or more closely, at the chaos in his younger body. Even though you're more compatible with me than Arthur, he's no slouch. He uses my power better, knows his place in the world's power scale, and has a great show about to begin. So if you want even the slightest chance of attracting me to you, give me more fun than that human brat could ever give me. I speak smiling as I had the whole conversation that was taking place in the city being destroyed, which was only a memory or simulation created by chaos. Naruto, I'm not interested. He replied simply as he turned away. He has more important things to do than having to fight King Arthur for the sake of chaos, like two boys fighting over the same girl. Chaos, if you win, Arthur will lose my power and become universal like before. Wouldn't that give them more of a chance to win? I speak chaos. Causing Naruto to stop in his tracks, the living concept of disorder yet order smiled at having the boy so easily on his side. I'm a creature of simple tastes. Just give me an interesting life and I assure you, you'll be able to outdo Arthur in my final decision. He said calmly as the imaginary city vanished in an explosion of golden light, which was different from the usual white light. And Naruto looked at the light in amazement. Golden light? I asked, looking at how only a deep crater that seemed to have no end was where the great city of the demonic kingdom used to be. And in the sky, above them was Naruto himself with the chaos robes, making it clear that yes, it was chaos that controlled him for 3 years 7 years ago. Chaos, quite a skill you have there, isn't it? I said, smiling. Although it visibly confused Naruto. Great skill? That's not your thing, he asked, even more confused. But the denial of chaos only increased his confusion. Abilities, powers, magic, magical power, and affinity. I have none of that. Everything I do is because I conceptually transcend it. I manipulate time because I trace it, I manipulate space because I transcend it, I manipulate mathematics, logic, luck, probability, destiny, reality, and the dimensional axis because I transcend it. He explained while at that moment, Naruto began to feel very dizzy and his view that was once the demonic realm began to become distorted. He felt like his existence was degraded and rejected to the point that an atom seemed larger than him. And if his mere presence seemed to cease to exist in a short time. But all that stopped when his vision returned to normal, and he noticed he was still flying in the crater his past self had left in this memory. Frowning, he looked at the chaos in front of him with anger bubbling in his eyes. Naruto, what was all that? He asked angrily. We're in your mind, but in short, I made it real. Then I added 4 axes of motion and 1 of time, giving you the first glimpse into the 4th dimension. He said calmly, but then smiled. That should show you my point. I don't have powers, I'm just on top of everything, and that's why I can do it. Although you, my users, must obtain those powers as abilities since you are far down in the infinity that separates us dimensionally. He said, smiling mockingly, that Naruto disliked him a lot. He knew that Chaos wasn't a small fish like Arthur, but to the point of transcending everything conceptually. That was the most illogical thing his mind had ever heard. Did they have a chance of winning if he ever wanted to destroy them? The answer was more than obvious, and that's why he decided to take a chance. Fine, I'll accept this game of yours. I'll make you choose me, the white-haired man said decisively. He reached out to Chaos, ready to take it, but he suddenly pulled it away. Which didn't faze Chaos himself. First of all, I want to ask you something. If you don't have any abilities, does that mean that golden light, the strange eyes I showed 7 years ago, are mine? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Chaos, yes and no, they're your powers, but Chaos has enhanced them. The eyes of the goddess now have a higher level, although you still don't even use level 1 per se, since you could use level 2 of the demonic power later. He said calmly, crossing his arms, while Naruto thought about it and nodded unconsciously. Level 2 of the power of the goddesses. That golden light must be coming from there. That means I'll have more things like this in the future. Yeah. Naruto was confused by Chaos's response. If you increase your abilities, I'll grant you another power of mine. You already have the ability to deny the concept of death, increase damage and cut through space, and entertain me. I'll give you something better. But don't forget, they're just toys to give me a show, they're not the show, so don't rely on them. He said, and Naruto finally gave him his hand, accepting the silent rest where he, apart from now on, would be one of the chosen of Chaos. Chapter 2, Episode 2. In the Kingdom of Lion, one could witness the great battle waged by King Arthur against 2 knights of the Apocalypse. Although battle was simply a way of saying it, it was more like a game between an adult and 2 children. Since King Arthur, like a good bearer of the creator of all things, was simply playing with the 2 boys, it was clear below that he remained in his position on the stairs while Percival and Tristan were thrown to the ground, miles away from the sky. And in the kingdom, Kafka and Silver Wolf watched this with no apparent interest in moving or acting on the king. March continued to fire arrows from different points in the kingdom, barely making Arthur move in the slightest. You won't achieve anything like this, Silver Wolf said, watching as Tristan was thrown back to the ground, having long since unleashed his full demonic power and largely gone out of control. Kafka. We don't want them to get anything, he said, waving a hand, causing the aching Percival to charge at King Arthur again. About 3 more minutes of distraction, and everything will be ready, he said, this time moving a finger in circles, making Percival, wrapped in his mafia, dodge the occasional rock that Arthur threw like a game of whack-a-bird. Silver Wolf, even so, do you think I can? Kafka smiled. Don't underestimate him, see, his power will be beyond what you can imagine, he said, smiling, as his hand moved again, helping / controlling Percival to run from pieces of clouds that transformed into rocks, and then changed into knives in an instant. Although he couldn't help much, since a strong blow sent him to collide with Tristan, who was trying to return to the fight, although he only received a Percival, apparently unconscious or dead from the strong blow. Contrary to his usual approach, Tristan pulled him away and charged directly at King Arthur. Arthur merely smiled. These are the knights who will bring about my end. I expect those of the Chaos Hunters, he said mockingly, while moving his hand and a beam of magic was directed at Tristan, although he deviated from the attack's trajectory and was going to launch a slash with dark matter towards the King of Camelot. Stop underestimating me. King Arthur noticed her angry voice as if describing the contents of an open book. It was obvious from miles away, which brought a playful smile to his face, as he seemed to move his hand, and the attack seemed to supernaturally go further to the right. Arthur, oh trouble at home, kiddo? Mom and Dad must treat you like an immature kid, and you're desperate to prove them wrong. Well, let me tell you, they're not wrong. You look like a kid throwing a tantrum. The words only angered Arthur further, who abandoned any use of magic or ranged attacks and decided to go straight for Arthur. He smiled, all as he planned. With a grin, a sword appeared in Arthur's hand, and he slashed down hard at Tristan as he ascended toward his position on the descending stairs of heaven. Pathetic. And with that, a massive burst of magic shot out in the shape of a crescent moon, heading straight for Tristan. With no chance to move, he could only place his wings of darkness and hands in an X shape to block as much of the magic as possible. Counterattack. Suddenly King Arthur's shirt received a horizontal cut that at the same time cut everything that was the ladder that descended from the sky and connected the portal where the space-time of the infinite kingdom of Camelot was. With no ladder to stand on, Arthur quickly fell to the ground far from the kingdom. Within the cloud, two silhouettes awaited him head-on. What a pleasant surprise, Your Majesty, Meliodas. With that, the silhouettes revealed themselves as Tristan and Meliodas himself, who stood with his sacred treasure in hand, ready to fight, the cape of the King of Lions fluttering in the wind. Arthur. The current leader of the great lionés said with a serious look and a cold voice. Do we really have to do this? Arthur, there's no need, Meliodas. If you give up and accept the punishment, everything will be faster, he said, smiling cruelly, to Meliodas's displeasure. So be it, the blonde replied, as he took off his king's cape and looked at Tristan, who was barely still wearing his full-body blue jumpsuit with his metal boots, since the jacket was destroyed. And his uncontrolled demonic power continued to run through his forehead, so much so that the four-pointed star was as big as his forehead and two streaks of darkness, resembling tears, fell from his eyes, adorning the beautiful purple tone of demonic power reflected in his eyes. Tristan, Meliodas called to his son, who looked at him in confusion. With a smile and a slight stretch, Meliodas smiled at the younger of the twins. Wait here for me, he said, disappearing in a blur, where in an instant the blonde was already on top of Arthur ready to start the great fight against the bearer of the Creator, the bearer of Chaos. The battle began quickly, with swords being struck here and there. Flashes of light seemed to appear simultaneously in different places, demonstrating the absurd strength and speed of the two kings from different nations. The battle was going very evenly, until in the middle of the battle Tristan appeared ready to strike against Arthur. It was useless, as the blast of hellfire he launched did nothing to Arthur, other than giving him the opportunity to hit Meliodas with a strong kick to the face. Arthur smirked. You've got a great son there, I can tell because you treat him like a child. He acts like one, very immature, and thinks he's anything but, he said mockingly. Which greatly angered the Nephilim himself. Tristan, don't listen to him. He's just trying to provoke you. Step aside and let me continue the fight, he said, looking at his son, who already had the demonic mark covering his entire forehead and the right side of his face. Contrary to Meliodas' wishes, Tristan only got angrier and, with a scream of utter rage, launched himself at Arthur. I'm not a child anymore, he shouted angrily, but whips of darkness stopped him. Calm down, Tristan, don't pay attention to him, he said, holding his son tightly, who was struggling wildly to free himself. Tristan, leave me alone, damn it! I'm not a kid who needs your help, I'm 16 damn years old. You and Mom just treat me like a brat, you trust Lancelot more than your son. Meliodas, you know that's not true. It's just that Lancelot. Tristan, Lancelot, the sins. Lancelot, the sins. They're all you trust, you never take me into account at all because you only see me as a damn child. A scream as an ace of light covered the whips of darkness, and with these weakened Tristan launched himself at Arthur, who just watched everything with amusement. You little ingrate! Smiling, King Arthur's sword lit up with pure magic. Let's finish this, he said, swinging the sword in a direct slash at Tristan, who was about to be stopped by Meliodas. Although it wasn't going to be fast enough. Cut. The words were spoken calmly, as the king's sword simply fell into two pieces. A silhouette appeared behind the group, from which a Naruto with both eyes black scara and purple pupils smiled. Well, 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 a child will give you so many difficulties, little Arthur? Everyone looked in surprise at the eldest lioness, who didn't really seem to be the lioness. You disappoint me more every day. If you keep this up, I'll have to change you. An even bigger smile spread across the boy's face, and his eyes shone with power. Even though he only had one eye visible, as usual, a purple light still shone in unison with the visible eye. Arthur, my apologies to you. I think the blow ruined your mind, brat, said the king of Camelot, smiling, looking the lioness straight in the eyes. With his own eyes the same way, although that confused him. Naruto's brow furrowed, his smile fading into a look of disgust. Your insolence, you always choose the path of punishment, apparently, Naruto said as Arthur's eyes suddenly returned to normal, and with an almost imperceptible movement from Naruto, Arthur stepped back a little with his nose bleeding. Even when I attacked in a finite time, you couldn't do anything? Pathetic. A smile appeared, then disappeared in an instant. You'll have to work twice as hard from now on, brat. I'm not going to be with you if you're that boring. Arthur frowned. Who the hell is it? It can't be the brat. He's completely different from him, and he's more powerful. The king smirked at the boy in front of him, his eyes returning to their former chaos form. You severed my connection to chaos to strike me down. Can't you do it like that? Chaos smiled. I severed your connection to me to show that you're in this situation, able to fight the strongest demon currently. For me and only me, don't push your luck, king. Or you'll go back to being that pathetic child begging for power from a simple sword like the little Excalibur. He said, surprising Arthur because the words were said as if it were someone else, someone he knew to some extent. And while the king thought about what he discovered, Naruto seemed to leave his mocking smile and his black Scara eyes disappeared, and returned to their white tone with the visible green eye. Naruto's eyes widened, showing that he was back to his old self. This feeling again. The boy looked around him, his green eyes taking on a blue hue, and a symbol resembling flower petals emerged in a strong, pure white color. The same feeling as 7 years ago, she whispered, looking at King Arthur in front of her. When she noticed her form had returned to normal, he gave her a friendly but fake smile. Who would have thought we'd have such a connection? Apparently, what happened so long ago wasn't just a coincidence, was it? Naruto said nothing and turned to his father, who was holding Tristan. Tristan seemed to have fallen unconscious and recovered in a few moments, as he didn't have the demonic mark and was lying on the ground. Leave this to me, he said simply. And Meliodas nodded, understanding. It's all yours, he said with a smile, and Naruto turned to face Arthur again, ignoring the fact that the rest of his hunter team arrived alongside the recovered Arthur's friends, Percival and Lancelot. Can you do it alone? He asked, narrowing his eyes at Naruto, though he frowned when he saw nothing in the boy's mind. It was completely blank like before, though now it seemed that way, instead of him making it blank himself. Although that mental bleach suddenly disappeared and some things could be noticed. Naruto, don't worry, just stay out of the way, he said without turning around and taking a few steps towards Arthur. He stood in front of King Arthur, who returned his calm gaze with a fake smile. Do you really think you can beat me? You can't fully utilize demonic or goddess power, and you had difficulty with Melascula. You won't win, he said resolutely. Though unresponsive, Naruto's hand seemingly moved an inch again. And instead of Arthur getting hit or anything, his mouth suddenly started bleeding, but without any pain. Naruto raised his hand and opened it, where 2 teeth. Arthur looked at his teeth, which were clearly missing from his front teeth. Do you want them? He said with a hint of mockery in his calm voice. Arthur looked surprised for a moment, but then recovered and smiled as always. Interesting, perhaps you're more of a challenge than the others, he said, his sword still as good as new, moving to slash. A cut rendered useless by Naruto, who, without moving, caused the sword to break again. Cut. It was his whisper, as he moved his hand, and with a jerk of movement, Arthur stepped aside. A large gash appeared in the ground, up to 8 kilometers deep and almost 2 meters wide. The Galen technique? Arthur said in surprise. Though he couldn't say more, he moved again when a cut appeared on the ground where he stood. It's almost invisible, but it still holds the specter of magic, the king thought calmly. As long as the ability maintains the magic spectrum, it could foresee any technique or cut even if it couldn't see or feel it directly. Cut. Naruto's voice came from behind Arthur, who thoughtlessly moved to the right. He earned a cut on his right arm, though, which was a kind of metallic golden gauntlet. Naruto, I'm faster, I can see all your movements in slow motion and I see the spectrum of your soul. You have nothing to do against me, he said calmly. When his hand lit up in a golden light that generated a great light for a single second, and as if he was summoning something, Naruto lowered his hand, and a strong beam of light fell at an amazing speed that not even Arthur himself reacted. With the others. Where did that come from? The boy with wing-shaped hair asked in surprise. Percival watched in amazement as the golden lightning bolt burned the tyrant king he was destined to defeat in such an astonishing way that it seemed like an adult disciplining a child. Kafka, from the sun, he said, looking at the sky, from where the light had fallen. Which surprised many people, because something like that was technically impossible and astonishing. So much so that no one could believe something of that level. Not even Silverwolf, who played literally with reality, believed something so absurd. Chaos is still as impressive as ever, he thought, looking up at the sky, where the sun seemed to shine a little more noticeably, the sunbeam seemingly clearing the clouds as it fell. But control will overcome it. There is no future. Only possibilities, and all of them are equally infinite and probable, and I will make sure that fate turns in my favor, he whispered with a smile, while his wine-colored eyes shone with a strong malicious tone. You will be more interesting than him, Naru? Silverwolf noticed this gleam in her eyes and frowned in doubt. What do you think now? Back on the battlefield. The dollar beam stopped its fall just 1 second after being cancelled. Naruto, are you done with the scandal? It was just a small dollar beam enhanced by my magic a few times, he said while his hands still glowed gold. The light of the goddesses enhanced by their connection to chaos. Arthur glared at the boy who was humiliating him, but instead of getting angry, he just smiled. We had such a good interaction today. It's a shame I can't really go all out against you. The king expected some surprise in Naruto's gaze, but he didn't seem to care. Creating and maintaining your beloved eternal kingdom puts so much pressure on you. Pathetic. Arthur didn't react and smiled. Having the golden metallic gauntlet back on his right arm, he smiled maliciously as his eyes gained their connection with chaos again. Arthur, I think that's enough fun. I'll leave you with my friends. It's time for me to get back to my royal duties. I hope you have more tricks up your sleeve soon, little lioness, he said, smiling, taking a step back. It all happened in an instant that no one else around could notice. Naruto looked down at King Arthur, who was lying on the ground with one of Naruto's feet, stopping any attempt by the King of Camelot to stand up. Naruto, where do you think you're going? We have a lot to talk about. Silly little brother. Chapter 3, Episode 2. Everyone was amazed to see how, in what seemed like no time at all, the younger lioness placed the King of Camelot on the ground, stepping on his chest, preventing any attempt to get back on his feet. Naruto, did you really think you could enter Lion and leave like nothing? You weaken yourself by bringing your kingdom, you leave it exposed to us, and yet you still have this confidence. It makes me believe you have no sense of danger, Your Majesty. A small smile appeared on Arthur's lips, abandoning any surprise he'd shown before. Do you think I'm just bringing my kingdom, or rather, putting on a show for you? As he said that, a green glow swept across the entire kingdom from above, where the sphere that was the eternal realm revealed a glow emanating from a part within it. Finish them off. With that, Arthur dissolved into reality itself, as the green glow grew. And before Naruto could even look up, a large green arrow fell upon Naruto, creating a massive explosion that consumed the entire area where he was fighting. The explosion stopped, and inside, with a sphere of golden light covering him, was Naruto, completely calm. Arrived, he thought, watching as several silhouettes fell from the sky. This isn't just a friendly visit from me. I'll finish you off here, Knights of the Apocalypse. Arthur's voice rang out loudly throughout the room, as the falling figures revealed his powerful presence, a presence that would bring anyone present to their knees if they chose. It's a pleasure to meet you all, representatives of Chaos. The lioness spoke as the figures ending their free fall revealed several familiar faces, one of whom caused his anger to suddenly rise. Danheng. His eyes of enlightenment/Kakwasigan, named after him, disappeared, and what was revealed were the eyes of the goddess clan, which still maintains its orange hue without the symbol. Naruto. The boy's voice sounded like a cold breath had blown, lacking any emotion in the slightest. Who would have thought you're still alive? This is a surprise to me. His voice didn't reflect his winter-like words in the slightest. And it was obvious the boy didn't care whether he lived or died. He had achieved his goals 7 years ago. Right now, there was nothing about him that interested him, or so Danheng himself must have thought. Naruto faced several familiar faces he had faced a while back. Danheng, the king's personal protector, Fuxian, the Eyes of Camelot, Raiden, the shogun of Camelot and Arthur's right-hand man, Cloud, Arthur's left-hand man and advisor, and finally, Naruto didn't recognize the last one. So you already have a replacement for Welt? You invested so much in him with his magic and artifacts, but his loss didn't seem to be that much to you. Arthur, who reappeared in reality just as he had disappeared before, smiled, his mocking expression still etched on his face, adorned with chaos-influenced eyes. Her loss was regrettable, but mourning won't help my kingdom at all. And you're wrong there. Esther isn't a replacement. She's been part of the kingdom's small group of promising young people for a few months now, he said, introducing himself to the black-haired boy now named Esther. He was a boy with super short black hair and dull crimson eyes that lacked much empathy. He wore warrior clothing, a black jacket with gold details and red edges, with a high collar that gave him a formal and elegant air. Under the jacket, the boy wears a red shirt with a geometric design on the chest that also has gold trim. The shirt is long-sleeved and the sleeves are white. He also wears a necklace with a diamond-shaped pendant. Additionally, he wears a golden belt that appears to be more decorative than functional, as it doesn't appear to hold any type of weapon or tool. On her wrists, she has what appear to be black bracelets or guards with gold detailing, which could serve both protection and style. Naruto ignored the new Camelot and activated his goddess magic. A beam of light lit up in his hand, generating a lightsaber nearly 2 meters long, which he pointed at the group. Let's see what they can do, he said as his eyes returned to the blue they were before, with the symbol of flower petals in his eyes rolling back, and the light in his hand transformed into the enhanced golden light from before. Danheng was the first to step forward, noticing his presence even more. I took care of him, he said, as in a green flash, a spear appeared in his right hand. Danheng hadn't changed at all. His attire was the same as it had been 7 years ago. Only now he wore an earring and his customized weapon, created by Chaos. The Spear of 1,000 Possibilities, a spear that does what its name says. During their fight, each blow generates a scenario where he throws 1,000 stabs with it, and if within those 1,000 stabs, one manages to hit, that blow will be brought to the reality of this imaginary scenario, striking and manipulating the future independent of how it should be. The best thing is that within these imaginary possibilities, no ability to avoid being hit works, so nothing like shields, abilities, or the like works. Only speed, strength, and reaction time work. Do you think you can finish them all off? Naruto looked to his side as Tristan fell, healed but with his clothes still mostly destroyed. Lancelot, who was the one who spoke, also came, along with his father and Kafka. What's happening with Silver Wolf and March? I asked, mentally looking at her partner. Both of you will stay behind. You can't help us without revealing your identity in front of everyone, she said calmly. Naruto nodded. And can you? I asked my partner through their mental bond, who just smiles in response. You worry too much, Nara. Naruto broke his mental bond and turned back to the representatives of Chaos. Take Arthur, he said to Lancelot, who raised an eyebrow in doubt. You're the best for it. I can't think of anyone with a better chance than you, he said, somewhat surprising everyone except Kafka. If I go for him, will you take the emo guy in the middle? He asked, looking at Danheng. Naruto nodded. We have personal issues from 7 years ago to resolve. Meliodas, Sate, And what am I doing here then? The king of Lioness asked doubtfully, looking at the young men, who ironically were taller than the millennial demon. Take Esther, maybe it won't be a challenge. Naruto shrugged because the guy seemed very ordinary to him. He didn't have any weapons, so he couldn't say much. Naruto, just make sure you finish well, he said seriously, as he took a step back and moved to the side. Everyone knew what he wanted to do, and in an instant Dan Heng disappeared from general view and was already several steps ahead of Naruto, leaving Kafka, Lancelot, Tristan and Meliodas. Tristan, what do we do with the others? Isn't it unfair? Meliodas smiled. Don't worry, Tristan. No one seems interested in getting involved in other people's battles. So we have free rein to fight our rivals. Without waiting any longer, the blonde launched himself at the dark-haired man in the middle, who promptly did the same. They both reached a standstill, where Meliodas sustained the boy's blow, but the boy did the same at the same time. This really isn't just anyone, Meliodas thought, noticing that the boy didn't flinch when he blocked his blow. He's possibly stronger than Arthur currently is, if his reaction said anything. Lancelot looked at Arthur, who, just by being seen, already had a purple sword covering anyone who might try to attack. However, King Arthur's hand made the sword fall from the purple-haired woman's hand. You shouldn't do this, Raiden. Raiden was an adult woman in her 20s and early 20s with cranberry-purple hair and eyes of the same color as her attire, which was a very short, white kimono with a purple hue. And with a dark purple belt with a smaller crimson one at the top, and a sash with a three-pointed symbol identical to the shoulder pad on his left arm. On his legs, he wore long black stockings, and in his hand, his purple sword was swung by himself. At Arthur's command, the expressionless woman dropped her weapon. Fine, let's see what you've got, War Knight, but I'm telling you, I'm not in the mood for games like before, he said, his eyes shifting to the purple ones with black scare imbued with chaos. Should that scare me or? Arthur didn't let his smile fade at Lancelot's nonchalant words. Tristan, make sure you punch one of them in the face, you hear me? Lancelot smiled at the younger lionés, who nodded seriously, looking at the group in the distance, where no one seemed to be paying much attention to him. Something that angered him to a certain extent, given everything that had happened today. Kafka, don't stress, they are naturally ignorant with everyone, he said, looking at the enemy group. Stop it, Lightning, he said, and with a movement, lightning struck the group, who didn't even really move. A cube barely covered them when they received the blow. Kafka, make sure you focus on specific attacks, where you won't miss, he thought, looking at Tristan, who, holding his weapons, nodded. Tristan understood, he said, looking at the group that was still standing back. Starfall. As he said this, a shower of lightning rays fell upon the group, though these rays were simply distorted in space, moving harmlessly to the side. I'll take him. The words came from a girl with black hair and light green streaks. She wore crimson glasses and wore a mostly dark brown outfit in the middle and a dark navy blue with bronze designs on the sides of her full-body suit. Fu Xian, fine, I'll hire the other one, she said as she began to float with her eyes shining in a pink hue, while Kafka, who was looking in front of her, was smiling without any discomfort while fighting against her. Kafka stared straight at the girl as her hand became engulfed in lightning, and the sky darkened above them. You know, it's always better to summon than to create, he said, and at that moment, lightning struck Fu Xian, which generated a magic shield that protected her from any harm. I'll have the advantage with her holding back here, Fu Xian thought. I still need to know exactly what they intend. 3 years ago they only wanted to create her, now what do the Chaos Hunters want to do? Elsewhere. Naruto and Dan Heng were already in a very remote place. They had even passed the mountains where Naruto had sent them a few moments ago. Are you Blade? Naruto didn't respond to his former friend's question. What makes you believe that? I ask 'cause I float over the mountain, which had suffered minor damage from his father and Arthur a while back. Yes, they both went with everything they had in base form, but everyone nonetheless. Dan Heng. Welf's death was a secret from everyone except the Chaos Knights, so no one in Britannia should know. You're happy about it, I'd say. So you killed him personally, something the Chaos Hunters only did on Ironside's word. Naruto looked down at them. Did Helena have the same fate? Naruto, do you honestly care? Danheng shook his head. No, he said calmly, knowing that he didn't care about wealth, Helena, or Topaz for that matter. But I need to know what happened to them. Naruto sneered. So you can tell your mom you lost them? He asked mockingly, looking at his friend, who didn't flinch. Since you know I'm Blade, why hold back my best skills? With a wave of his hand, the dimension opened, and the flowers of hell blossomed on the ground. The sacred treasure, Blade, emerged, and Naruto took hold of it. He swung it, creating a gash in space itself. Naruto, Helena died 7 years ago to be precise, he said smiling, while the symbol in his eyes glowed in the whitest light anyone could see. She said it herself? Chapter 4, Episode 2. Naruto and Danheng could be seen ready to start the fight, both with their respective weapons in hand, waiting for one of them to start the fight. And it was Danheng who, with a flick of his spear and the activation of his magic, caused green-colored creatures to shoot out at Naruto. He barely saw them and raised his fingers and pointed at them. Cut! He said as a powerful slash made sure to split the magical beings in half. It didn't matter much, though, as many more shot back toward Naruto, who began using his sword to slash at all the creatures equally. Since when is he able to use these abilities? He wondered, slashing at one of the creatures, splitting it in half, along with 2 more following behind. If he remembers correctly, the last time he saw anything of Sanheng's abilities was during his invasion of Camelot a few years ago. During that invasion, his fight was short and one-sided against the most powerful being at the time. Though he didn't take into account that Danheng himself would improve after that fight, as long as he didn't do anything to properly become stronger. Knowing that he was superior to the strongest of the 3 he wanted to kill made him so satisfied that he forgot that everyone can improve. That doesn't matter yet, I'll kill him anyway, he whispered angrily. As an explosion of light finished off the piles of creatures, Naruto's goddess eyes were now fully revealed. The goddess symbol of a white fan appeared in the center of his orange eyes. Danheng out. With the movement of the Danheng spear, a crimson and black bird flew towards Naruto, who jumped back trying to dodge the attack. Although he couldn't, as when he tried to move to the right side, this magical bird followed him. Is it a real phoenix? He thought, surprised to see that the creature seemed to be moving on its own. This was reinforced when, after cutting off a wing, it reappeared from the flames of the firebird, which gave him a strong stampede head-on, sending him against the mountain and crashing into it. This one is easier than the previous ones. Whisper, as her eyes left the symbol of the goddesses, and a mark appeared above her right eye, as these same eyes turned dark purple and the symbol of the demonic mark was fully displayed. Okay, let's start over, he said, his voice even higher in pitch, his tone dark and cold. With demonic power in his hand, Naruto covered his sword in darkness while the purgatory fire, one of the most powerful fires, appeared, covering and enhancing his sword's attack power. And with a sway, a flare of darkness moved directly toward the plummeting phoenix. And in a clash in the center, the great explosion of purgatory fire and the crimson flames of the phoenix filled the entire sky as they looked. Naruto and Danheng stared at each other, while the black-haired boy finally seemed to decide to start a real fight. Something Naruto noticed, as he grabbed his sword and held it in front of Danheng as a threat. Naruto, do you finally think you can move that spear of yours beyond simple tricks? I hope you don't regret this, Danheng said, gripping the spear tightly and seemingly waiting for something, but from the moment he took the first step, everything happened. Danheng was digging the tip of his spear into Naruto's shoulder, who had his sword passing by Danheng's head. The way this shit happened, he barely moved. He thought with a frown. While ignoring the spear in his shoulder, he decided to swing his sword, trying to knock Danheng's head off, but Danheng was able to dodge his attack again. The difference between Welf, Helena, and me is too great for you to believe I'll be as easy as them. I'll make sure to finish what King Arthur couldn't hear, regardless of how you survived before. Naruto frowned. Eat if you could, he whispered, annoyed because really he couldn't die. Something that took away from his plans was his death after his revenge. Perhaps he could die after pleasing Chaos. Or maybe you don't die, you never thought about that possibility? Naruto ignored the voice of reason in his mind and launched himself at Dan Heng as the two clashed weapons. Or so it seemed, as an instant later, with no time to react, Naruto had the spear in his chest while his sacred treasure was stuck in the ground. -6,000, not bad. Pulling his spear out of Naruto's chest, Dan Heng glared at Naruto, who regenerated his wound with darkness. Can you do more than this? Because if not, this is pointless. Naruto frowned as his demonic mark grew a bit larger and took over the right side of his face. The mark was more uncontrolled, and Naruto had his eyes with a crimson hue in the center, and the mark under his eye, instead of being a simple tear, was like a lightning bolt falling through his eye. Dan Heng struck his spear against his ear, causing lava-like soldiers to appear in front of him. These were more like magical creatures from what they appeared to be, though Naruto could tell they had many strange qualities about them. He had never heard of magical creatures with that form or power before. Naruto, will you continue with these games? He asked, as with a sweep of his sword, a slash split the mountain in the distance, and with it the creatures in front of it. That won't be enough. Naruto heard Dan Heng behind him, and moving backwards he dodged the spear blow, slightly surprising the black-haired boy. 0 out of 1,000. Dan Heng thought as he sighed. This doesn't seem like something I can safely take as a game. Did his power increase that much with that simple brand evolution? Naruto launched himself at Dan Heng, both clashing weapons before separating and clashing weapons again. Naruto swept the black-haired man's feet, who moved into a backflip, when Naruto was already ready to cut Dan Heng, who, upon hitting the ground, stepped back, avoiding the slash as it sliced through Naruto's sword-wielding arm. Though a bit dark, the arm remained in its position. And trying to launch a more powerful attack from up close, the boy swung the sword with darkness magic on the edge. 3 divine slashes, he said as 3 slashes of dark energy cut the short space between them. But still Dan Heng was able to dodge it. It wasn't easy, though, as a cut extended across his shoulder, clearly extending from his chest to his back. The cut disappeared in the next moment, which surprised him. What? Now you're even trying to copy me? How cute, she said with a mocking look at the boy, who shook his head without much interest. Dan Heng, after my defeat against you, I decided that going beyond human would be the best option to gain my true power, and I was not wrong. I awakened my magical power, and now I not only summon, but I create magical creatures with my magic that grows stronger with me and can be summoned as many times as I want. Dan Heng proved what he had said when the phoenix he destroyed earlier now charged toward him again, but twice as large and faster. It wasn't much of a surprise, though, as it only dodged the stampede and a burst of purgatory fire, destroying it. So much for dying in such a pitiful way. And tell me, what did you give up for this increase in power? I doubt it's a Christmas present Santa left you. What did you leave behind to go beyond what was humanly possible, Dan Heng? The boy didn't respond when he simply. Naruto, I thought so. Without another word, spheres of darkness appeared around him and lit up. Divergence, darkness, multiple perforation. With those words, the great stampede of darkness launched itself at high speed toward Dan Heng, who began to dodge easily. While one of the mountains, which took half the attack, was destroyed moments later. And at the center of the destruction, Dan Heng could be seen inside a perfect, unchanging cube. Puncture! Dan Heng whispered as his spear pointed toward Naruto. And as if on cue, Naruto felt something and moved, when the mountain behind him received a circle of something that pierced him. That was like my cut, he whispered angrily. Did he copy the technique he himself had copied from the demon named Galen earlier? But he placed it in the form of a spear, piercing like a slash, but perhaps without split, giving him a chance to win. He just needs to generate the technique. You just need a simple moment, an instant where you could take the step you needed to do the second phase of the technique. Space cut. Naruto swung his sword at Dan Heng, who moved and the sky opened up revealing something surprising before the two of them fighting. I didn't know he could do that. Dan Heng, You open the space, but why is another part of the universe shown? Naruto smiled, theories running through his mind. The cut splits space, but when you do that, what happens to the cut next? The question arose in his mind, and an answer came instantly. The cut continues its path through the void between universes and continues on to another universe, which it cuts again, opening up space. But what I didn't know was why the two rifts connected. Because the rift in space in my universe connected with the rift in the other universe, connecting both universes. Maybe I could go there after this, learn about that universe, investigate. The cut closed. The sky returned to normal, leaving Naruto blank. He thought too quickly about the whole point. Naruto left him to turn to Danheng, who frowned at him. That ability was a problem for Camelot if the lioness knew how to use it. Nothing important. Danheng gripped his spear when, with one movement, Naruto received a piercing in his right chest. This made the white-haired man tighten his grip on his sword, yet he couldn't grasp his weapon, generating a cut that Danheng let go to his side. Divergence, piercing darkness. The sphere of darkness reappeared and became extremely small, until in an instant it shot out toward Danheng. With a flick of his spear, a perfect cube appeared and protected him from the blow. Although Naruto didn't seem surprised, and instead of continuing the attack, he let it go. Can I win at this rate? The lion native whispered to himself in doubt. The battle wasn't going anywhere, and that angered him. We'd better focus on something else. The reason echoed in his mind, but he just frowned. Shut your mouth, she said, making Naruto frown even more. You know what, screw you, he thought as his eyes flicked to the eyes of enlightenment with the white lotus flower shining with power in the sky blue eyes. Naruto, I'll go until I kill you. Naruto launched himself at Danheng, his body lighting up and a glow illuminating the surrounding area. Lying flash, miraculous explosion. The explosion began to move strongly, consuming all that were the ancient mountains around the kingdom of Lion, leaving the old mountainous praeds as nothing. The explosion was so great that the mountains were nothing more than ants in its reach. That won't be enough. Danheng, who was inside another perfect circle, looked at Naruto, who no longer had his jacket on. He was flying with his goddess-like wings in a direction he knew where it was. You won't, he said, showing anger in the voice that came out of his expressionless face, and when he disappeared from the magic circle, he appeared next to Naruto who, already sensing it, blocked it with his sword, causing Danheng's frown to increase. Court. The cut was dodged. But it was enough to let Naruto kick Danheng in the face, who blocked it and attacked with his own version of magic. Pierce. An egg appeared on Naruto's chest, and he remained unfazed, slashing downwards. Danheng had to coat his sword with chaos magic to deflect the spatial slash. Danheng, you won't be able to do anything with His Majesty here. Surrender. Naruto, even your Majesty has a limit to what you can do outside your dimension, he said while trying to fly again, and sure if walking towards what he would do was the door between the eternal realm and the universe. A green hand stopped him in his tracks. And later, a blue hand crushed his figure against the ground, temporarily immobilizing him and burying him in a crater. But instantly another, larger golden, skeletal fist struck him a few more times, sending shockwaves from the impacts, making sure to keep the older lioness on the ground. I won't let you go, Danheng said, his spear glowing with power. His green eyes now took on a more blue and empty hue, as what seemed to be pure magic gushed out of his body. Try to stop me, Naruto said, walking out with his body healed. Although the only mark on his body, besides the purple line under his left eye, was a scar that divided his neck from his head. A scar that seemed unaffected by his regeneration factor. Danheng, something capable of denying regeneration? Some demon? Naruto moved his hands slightly, and now his lotus-like eyes shone a deeper gold than the previous white. I will light the way for you to the afterlife, Danheng, he said with a mocking smile, ready to go with everything he had now.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.